3 weeks ago, he'd stood in that same driveway thinking he'd found it the quiet place where he could rebuild, fix the house, work the land, maybe sleep through the night for once. Now he pulled up and saw a battlefield. The property wasn't much, 20 acres barn with bad shingles house that needed everything. But it was his, paid for with deployment savings and VA benefits. No mortgage, no landlord, no one to answer to. Except now, Axel was fighting for his life because he'd taken a drink from what should have been clean water. Jack didn't sleep. He sat on the porch with coffee going cold, watching Prairie Chem's lights in the distance, feeling something old and familiar settle in. Not fear, he'd lived with fear until it became just another constant like gravity. This was colder. This was the feeling that someone was lying, and people were going to die because of it. But what Jack didn't know yet was that he'd just made himself a target. And in a town where money talks and justice whispers, targets don't usually survive long. At first light, Jack walked the property line. The creek was maybe 4 feet wide, shallow enough to step across. Clear water over gray stones. Nothing obviously wrong. No smell, no discoloration, no dead fish. But Axel didn't make mistakes. Jack found where his dog had approached paw prints in soft, mud-disturbed stones. Then 20 feet upstream, he found something else. A depression in the bank hidden by overgrown brush. When Jack pushed aside the vegetation, he found concrete. Old weathered. Metal grate covering a dark opening. A pipe, aimed straight at the creek. He pulled out his phone, started taking pictures, and heard a truck engine. Jack turned. Rusted Ford F-150 old man at the wheel. The truck stopped, and the driver climbed out slow, like joints that didn't work right anymore. "You the fellow bought the Reeves place." "Jack Mercer." He walked over, extended his hand. "Now it's 4. The rest sold out or went bankrupt. Crops fail, livestock get sick, kids get health problems, and when you try to get answers, you hit a wall." "What kind of wall?" "The kind with money behind it. Sheriffs in their pocket. County commissioners get campaign donations. Prairie Chem employs 300 people, 300 families depending on those paychecks. So you ask yourself, you want to keep your job or you want to make waves? Seems like an easy choice. That's because you haven't lived here through a Nebraska winter with no income." Hank's voice was tired, not angry. "These are good people. They're just scared. They've learned that standing up gets you hurt." "Hurt how?" Hank was quiet. Then, "My nephew worked at Prairie Chem. Safety inspector. Started noticing irregularities in the waste disposal logs. Asked questions." He met Jack's eyes. "They didn't fire him. That would have looked bad. They made his life miserable until he quit. Denied his safety reports, changed his shifts to midnight with no notice. Started rumors he was stealing. By the time he left, couldn't get a reference from anyone. Now he's at a warehouse in Omaha, making half what he used to." Jack felt anger rising, the kind that used to get him in trouble. "So, everyone just accepts it. What choice do we have?" Hank shook his head. "I'm telling you this because you seem decent, and I don't want to see you destroyed. Sell the place. Take your dog and go somewhere else. This fight's already lost." Jack was already shaking his head. "I didn't come here to run." "Didn't figure you did." Hank sighed. "Well, if you're going to be stubborn, at least be smart. Don't go poking around alone. Don't trust the sheriff. And don't drink the water." He climbed back in his truck, paused with the door open. "Dr. Ruiz is good people. So are Mateo and Elena Garza up the road. If you're going to build something, build it with folks you can trust." The truck pulled away. Jack stood there looking at the hidden pipe, then at Prairie Chem beyond his fence. He thought about families forced off their land, about Dr. Ruiz keeping records because something felt wrong, about Hank's nephew broken down and pushed out, and he felt purpose settle over him like armor. What Jack didn't realize was that someone at Prairie Chem had already noticed him asking questions, and they were making calls. He pulled out his phone, called the clinic. "How's Axel?" "Responding to treatment," Dr. Ruiz said. "You can pick him up this afternoon." "Good, because I need to ask you something." Jack kept his voice level. If I wanted to document what's in this creek, if I wanted proof that would actually matter, how would I do that? Silence. Then, come to the clinic at 6. After hours, we'll talk. She hung up. Jack stood there feeling the weight of what he was starting. He'd come to Nebraska for peace, to leave the war behind. But some battles don't wait for permission. He took more pictures of the pipe, the creek, the angle toward his property. Then he headed back to the house and stopped dead. His truck's driver door was open. Jack knew he'd locked it. He always locked it. 15 years of military training didn't just disappear. He approached careful scanning for threats. The door hadn't been forced. No broken glass. But someone had been inside. The glove box was open. Papers scattered. Center console rifled through. Nothing taken. Just searched. Jack's pulse kicked up. He checked the house locked undisturbed. Checked the barn same, just the truck. Someone was sending a message. We know you're here. We know what you're doing. We can reach you anytime. Jack pulled out his phone, almost called the sheriff, then remembered Hank's warning. Sheriff's in their pocket. Instead, he took pictures of everything. The open door, the disturbed papers, the way his registration had been pulled out and left on the seat like whoever did it wanted him to know it wasn't random. Then he did a sweep under the truck. Found it behind the rear wheel well. Small black box, maybe 3 inches square magnetic mount. GPS tracker. Jack's training kicked in. Don't panic. Don't react. If they're tracking you, use it. Let them think they're ahead while you plan 3 steps further. He left the tracker in place, closed the truck door, went inside and made a list of everyone he'd talked to in the last 24 hours. Dr. Ruiz. Hank. That was it. Either someone at the clinic talked, or Hank was being watched, or Prairie Chem was monitoring everyone who bought property along that western boundary. Probably all 3. The next 6 hours crawled. Jack cleaned his Mossberg 500, checked his ammunition, set up sight lines from the house windows. Not paranoid, prepared. There's a difference. At 6:15 p.m., he pulled into the clinic's empty parking lot. Just Dr. Ruiz's Honda with the coexist sticker. Front door locked, light in the back. He knocked. Dr. Ruiz let him in, locked the door behind him. Led him through the empty lobby to her office cramped space lined with filing cabinets and textbooks. Axel was in a large kennel, awake but groggy. His tail thumped when he saw Jack. Hey, buddy. Jack knelt by the kennel, let Axel lick his hand through the bars. You scared me. He can go home tonight, Dr. Ruiz said. But no creek water, filtered or bottled only. Watch for tremors, confusion, loss of coordination. I will. Thank you for saving him. That's my job. She sat at her desk, gestured to the other chair. Now tell me what you're thinking. I found a pipe. Concrete structure hidden in brush aimed right at the creek. If Prairie Chem's dumping illegally, that's how. Dr. Ruiz nodded slow. And you want to prove it. Don't you? Of course. But Jack, I've been here 8 years. I've seen good people try to fight this and lose everything. Marriages break up, businesses fail, people forced out. She leaned forward. What makes you think you'll be different? Maybe I won't, but I can't do nothing. Why? You don't owe this town anything. You've been here 3 weeks. Jack thought about how to explain it. I spent 15 years in the army. They teach you the strong protect the weak. When you see something wrong, you don't walk past, you step up. Doesn't matter if it's easy. Doesn't matter if you're scared. He looked at Axel. He almost died because someone's making money cutting corners. How many kids are drinking that water? How many families getting sick and don't know why? If I walk away, who am I? Dr. Ruiz studied him, then opened a desk drawer, pulled out a folder. Medical records from the last 3 years. Animal cases similar to Axel's. I kept copies because something felt wrong. She handed it to him. If you're doing this, do it right. Documentation, chain of custody, witnesses. Jack opened the folder, pages of blood work, vet reports, addresses. This could cost you your license. Only if we get caught before we get proof. She pulled out a second folder. Human cases, Not mine, I'm a vet. But I've been talking to Dr. Patel at County Health. Neurological issues, unexplained cancers. Childhood leukemia rates 3 times the state average in this zip code. Her voice was tight with controlled anger. This isn't just animals, Jack. It's people, families, kids. Jack felt something shift in his chest. Not revenge, justice. What do we need? Water samples properly collected and documented. Soil samples around that pipe. Photographic evidence with timestamps. And we need to do it without trespassing because anything illegal won't hold up in court. The pipe's on my property. Then we start there. She walked to a filing cabinet, pulled out a box. Sample collection kit. Sterile containers, proper labels, documentation forms. You'll need to log date, time, location, and have a witness present when you collect. Who can I trust? Hank Dwyer's solid, and the Garzas, Mateo and Elena. They've lost enough to Prairie Chem, they'll want to help. She handed him the box. But Jack, once you start this, there's no backing out quietly. They'll know it's you. They'll come after you. Are you ready? Jack thought about Axel seizing in his arms, about families forced off their land, about kids getting sick while corporations covered their asses. Yeah, I'm ready. Then we do this smart, methodical, by the book. Because we get one shot, and if we mess it up, they'll bury us so deep nobody finds the bodies. But what neither of them knew was that the clinic's phone line had been tapped for 3 months. Every word they'd just said had been recorded. And the man listening was already making calls. Jack took Axel home that night, carried him into the house, laid him on the old couch. The dog was weak, but alive. Jack sat on the floor beside him, one hand on Axel's head, feeling steady breathing. "We're gonna fix this," he said quietly. "I promise." Axel's tail thumped once. Jack's phone buzzed. Text from unknown number. "Leave town while you still can." His blood went cold, then hot. He grabbed his laptop, started searching. Prairie Chem corporate structure, executive names, board members, local connections, sheriff's campaign donations. There it was. $50,000 from Prairie Chem Political Action Committee. County commissioners, another $75,000 split between 3 races. Jack kept digging. News articles, EPA compliance reports, lawsuits settled out of court with NDAs, always NDAs. A pattern of complaints followed by silence, followed by people leaving town. His phone buzzed again. "Your dog was just the warning." Jack stared at the message, then typed back, "Come try it yourself." 3 dots appeared, disappeared. No response. Jack set the phone down, checked the Mossberg again, and felt calm settle over him. They wanted to scare him. They'd just made a mistake. You don't threaten a combat veteran and expect him to fold. You threaten him, you'd better be ready to follow through. And you'd better be ready for what comes back. The next morning, Jack drove north 2 miles. Sign at the driveway, Garza Family Farm Organic Produce. The house was cheerful yellow. A man in his early 30s came out wiping his hands on a rag. Strong build, weathered face, cautious eyes. "Can I help you?" "Jack Mercer. Bought the old Reeves place south of here. Dr. Ruiz said I should talk to you." Caution shifted to interest. "Lena sent you." He extended his hand. "Mateo Garza. Come on in. Elena will want to hear this." Inside, a woman with long dark hair and tired eyes poured coffee without asking. Set 3 mugs on a worn table. "You're the veteran," she said, not a question. "Word travels. Small town, plus Hank called this morning." Elena sat across from him. "Said you're asking questions about the creek. My dog nearly died from it." Jack wrapped his hands around the mug. "Dr. Ruiz says it's happened to others." Mateo and Elena exchanged a look that held years of shared pain. "Our well went bad 18 months ago," Mateo said. "Chemical smell. Had it tested, came back with elevated industrial contamination. Had to dig a new well. Cost us $20,000 we didn't have. Took a second mortgage. Did you report it? To everyone who'd listen. Elena's voice was bitter. County Health, State, EPA, the sheriff. You know what they said? Inconclusive. Naturally occurring. Not enough evidence. She stood, pulled a folder from a drawer, dropped it on the table. These are our test results. These are medical bills from when our daughter started having headaches and nosebleeds. These are letters from lawyers who said we don't have a case because we can't prove direct causation. Jack opened the folder, saw the stack of documentation, mounting evidence of a family under siege. How old is your daughter? 7. Mateo's jaw was tight. She's on medication now. Neurological issues. They can't explain it. Started right after the well went bad. Jack felt rage building cold and focused. I'm documenting what's in that creek. Water samples, soil samples, everything. Dr. Ruiz is helping. I need witnesses I can trust. Why? Elena asked. Why do you care? You just got here. Because it's wrong. Jack met her eyes. And because I didn't survive Afghanistan to come home and watch American families get poisoned by corporations who think they're above the law. Mateo leaned back, studying Jack. You know they'll come after you. Let them. I'm serious. They have money, lawyers, connections. What do you have? A German shepherd with a grudge and a bad temper when people mess with things I care about. Jack paused. And apparently some neighbors who were sick of being pushed around. Elena looked at her husband. Something unspoken passed between them. She turned back to Jack. What do you need? Tomorrow night, if you can. We collect samples from the creek and pipe on my property. Properly documented, properly witnessed by the book. Then we take it to the state EPA and the press. The press won't listen, Mateo said. They didn't before. They will if we give them something too big to ignore. Jack pulled out his phone, showed them pictures of the hidden culvert. This is on my land. Proof of an illegal discharge point, combined with water samples showing contamination, combined with medical records showing illness patterns. That's not coincidence. That's criminal negligence. Elena stared at the photos. Something shifted in her expression. Not hope yet, but possibility. We're in, she said, whatever you need. They spent an hour planning. Mateo had surveying equipment from his old construction job, GPS units, measuring tools, documentation materials. Elena had been keeping a journal of every health issue, every failed crop, every conversation with officials who didn't listen. Together, they built a timeline, a map of evidence damning in its consistency. One more thing, Mateo said as Jack was leaving. You need to understand who you're fighting. Prairie Chem isn't just some factory. They're the biggest employer in the county. They sponsor Little League, donate to churches, send execs to sit on the school board. When you go after them, you're not just fighting a corporation, you're fighting the whole structure that depends on them. Then we make it impossible for people to look away, Jack said. We make the truth so loud they can't pretend they don't hear it. He drove home with pieces clicking together the way they used to before missions. Intel, assets, objectives, contingencies. But what Jack didn't see was the black SUV parked a quarter-mile down the road, watching through telephoto lens, documenting everyone who came and went from the Garza farm. That afternoon, Jack was in the barn organizing tools when Axel started barking. Not his normal bark, the combat alert he'd used overseas. Threat present. Threat close. Jack grabbed the Mossberg, moved to the window. A sheriff's cruiser was pulling into his driveway. Sheriff Wade Brody climbed out. Late 50s gut hanging over his belt, the kind of cop who'd given up pretending to serve and protect years ago. He walked toward the house, slow hand resting casual on his service weapon. Jack met him on the porch, shotgun visible but not raised. Sheriff? Mr. Mercer. Brody's eyes flicked to the Mossberg. That really necessary? On my property. Yeah. What can I do for you? Just wanted to welcome you to the county. Make sure you're settling in okay. I'm fine. That's good. That's real good. Brody smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Heard you had some trouble with your dog. Hope he's doing better. He is. Glad to hear it. Also heard you've been asking questions, poking around, making some folks nervous. What folks? Just folks. You know how small towns are. People talk. Brody shifted his weight. Now I get it. You're new here. You're adjusting. But sometimes new folks come in with ideas about how things should be, and they don't understand how things actually work. You follow? Jack felt cold fury building. Not really. Why don't you spell it out? It's like this. We got a good thing going here. Prairie Chem provides jobs, supports the community. Sure, sometimes there's complaints, that's just the nature of industry. But we handle those through proper channels. We don't need outsiders stirring up trouble based on speculation and rumors. My dog nearly died. And I'm sorry about that, but dogs get into things. Doesn't mean there's some conspiracy. Brody's smile faded. Here's my advice. Focus on fixing up your property. Get to know your neighbors. Don't go looking for problems that ain't there. Because people who make waves in this county, they tend to find themselves in difficult situations. Is that a threat? That's friendly advice. From your local sheriff, who's here to protect and serve. Brody tipped his hat. You have a good day now, Mr. Mercer. He climbed back in the cruiser, pulled out slow. Jack stood there watching him go, Mossberg still in hand, and felt something crystallize. This wasn't just corporate malfeasance. This was systemic corruption. The kind that infected everything from law enforcement to local government. The kind that required more than evidence, it required exposure, so public they couldn't sweep it under the rug. His phone buzzed. Text from Dr. Ruiz. Need to talk. Urgent. Not on phone. Jack's gut tightened. He loaded Axel into the truck, drove to the clinic. Found Dr. Ruiz in her office, face pale. They called, she said. Prairie Chem's legal department. Said they'd heard I was spreading false information about water contamination. Said if I continued, they'd file a complaint with the state veterinary board. Accuse me of malpractice. Her hands were shaking. Jack, I could lose my license. Everything I've built. Did they threaten you directly? They didn't have to. The message was clear: back off or be destroyed. She looked at him. I'm sorry. I want to help, but I can't risk. I understand. Do you? Because I feel like a coward. You're not a coward. You're a doctor protecting your ability to help people. Jack leaned forward. But I need to ask, will you still treat Axel if he needs it? Of course. Then that's enough. I'll find another way. But as Jack drove home, he wondered if he actually would. Without Dr. Ruiz's medical expertise, without her documentation, did he have enough to make a case? His phone rang. Unknown number. Jack answered. Yeah. Heavy breathing on the other end. Then a voice electronically distorted. You've got 72 hours to sell that property and leave. After that, we stop being nice. Who is this? Click. Jack stared at the phone. 72 hours. He called Mateo. We need to move up the timeline. Tomorrow night. Can you do it? What happened? I'll explain when I see you. Can you do it? Pause. Yeah. We'll be ready. Jack hung up, looked at Axel in the passenger seat. The dog was watching him with intelligent eyes, like he understood exactly what was coming. It's about to get rough, Jack said. You up for it? Axel's tail thumped. Jack drove home as the sun set. Tomorrow night they'd collect the samples, document everything. Then they'd go over the sheriff's head straight to the state EPA and whatever media outlets would listen. But first, he had to survive the night, because the deadline wasn't 72 hours. That was just what they told him to make him complacent. The real attack would come sooner, probably tonight. Jack knew how this worked. He'd run enough psychological operations overseas. You give the enemy a false timeline to make them lower their guard. Then you hit them when they're not expecting it. So Jack prepared. He loaded magazines, set up sight lines, positioned flashlights at strategic points. locked Axel in the house where he'd be safe. Then he settled into the darkness of his barn with the Mossberg across his lap and waited. At 2:17 a.m., Axel started barking. Jack moved to the window. 2 vehicles approaching with headlights off, pickup truck and a sedan. They stopped at the end of his driveway. 4 men got out. No masks, no attempt at concealment. They wanted him to see them. Wanted him to know exactly who was coming. Jack counted weapons. 2 baseball bats, 1 tire iron. 1 handgun visible, probably more concealed. His training took over. Assess threats. Calculate response. Identify objectives. They weren't here to kill him, not yet. That would bring too much attention. They were here to scare him, hurt him, make him understand the consequences of not backing down. The men started walking toward his house. Casual, confident, like they'd done this before. Jack stepped out onto his porch. Mossberg raised. "That's far enough." They stopped. The one with the handgun laughed. "Look at this. G.I. Joe thinks he's gonna take all 4 of us." "I don't think," Jack said calmly. "I know, because that shotgun holds 8 rounds, and I only count 4 of you. Math's not complicated." "Tough guy, huh?" The leader took another step. "We're just here to have a conversation." "Then have it from there." "Thing is, Mr. Mercer, you've been making some people uncomfortable. Asking questions, making accusations. That's not neighborly." "Neither is poisoning my dog." "Accidents happen. But they don't have to keep happening. You follow." The leader smiled. "We're offering you a deal. 50,000 cash for your property. Clean sale, no questions asked. You take the money, you leave, everybody's happy." "Not interested." "That's disappointing. Because the alternative is, we make your life very difficult. And before you get any ideas about calling the sheriff, remember he already warned you. This is your last chance to do this the easy way." Jack chambered around in the Mossberg. The sound was loud in the quiet night. "Here's my counteroffer. You turn around. You leave my property. And you tell whoever sent you that I don't scare easy." The men looked at each other. The leader's smile faded. "You're making a mistake." "Won't be my first. Won't be my last." "Okay." The leader nodded. "Okay. We tried to be reasonable." He turned to go, then spun back fast, bringing up his handgun. Jack's training took over. He didn't think, just reacted. Mossberg came up finger on trigger, but he didn't fire. Because the one thing Jack had learned overseas was that sometimes the threat of violence was more effective than violence itself. "Don't," Jack said quietly. "You draw that weapon, I will put you down. And unlike you, I don't miss." The leader froze. Sweat beaded on his forehead. His hand was still on the gun, halfway out of his waistband. The moment stretched. Finally, he let go of the weapon, raised his hands. All right, we're leaving." Smart choice. The men backed toward their vehicles. The leader pointed at Jack. "You just made the biggest mistake of your life. Tell your boss I said to come personally next time. I don't negotiate with hired help." They climbed into their vehicles, engines started, and they pulled away fast. Jack stood on his porch, Mossberg still raised, until their taillights disappeared. Then his hands started shaking, not from fear, from adrenaline crash. He'd come that close to killing someone on American soil, on his own property, because a corporation didn't want to be held accountable. He went inside, checked on Axel, then pulled out his phone. Called 911. 911, what's your emergency? This is Jack Mercer, 4725 County Road 18. 4 men just attempted to assault me on my property. Armed. Made threats. I need to file a report. Is anyone injured? No, I drew a weapon and they left. Stay on the line. I'm dispatching a deputy. 40 minutes later, a deputy arrived. Not Sheriff Brody. Younger guy, looked nervous. Jack walked him through what happened. Described the vehicles, the men, the weapons, the threats. The deputy took notes. You said you drew a weapon? Shotgun. Legal to own. Legal to use in defense of my property. I'm not questioning that, sir. Just documenting. The deputy closed his notebook. "I'll file this report. But Mr. Mercer, between you and me, be careful. You're poking at something bigger than you realize." "Is that official advice?" "That's me trying to help." The deputy headed back to his cruiser, then stopped. "My sister had a kid 2 years ago. Born with a heart defect. Doctors can't explain it. We live 3 miles from that plant." He met Jack's eyes. "If you find something, if you prove something, people need to know. But watch your back." He left. Jack stood in his driveway as dawn started breaking, exhausted, but wired. They'd sent 4 men. He'd held them off. But next time they'd send more. Or they'd be smarter. Or they'd go after someone he cared about instead of him directly. The fight was escalating, and Jack was running out of time. His phone buzzed. Text from Mateo. "We're still in. Tonight. 11 p.m. We'll bring equipment." Jack typed back, "Bring cameras too. Document everything. This is about to get real. Because one way or another tomorrow, the evidence would exist. Tomorrow, they'd have proof. Tomorrow, the choice would be, Prairie Chems come clean or go down fighting. And if they chose fighting, Jack would give them a war they weren't prepared for." He went inside, lay down on the couch next to Axel, and managed 3 hours of sleep before his phone rang again. It was Hank Dwyer. "Jack, you need to hear this. Someone spray-painted the Garza's barn last night. Called them traitors. Elena's scared to let her daughter outside. And there's talk around town Prairie Chems offering bonuses to employees who report anyone spreading false information about the company. They're turning neighbors against each other." Jack felt cold settle in. "They're isolating us. Classic counterinsurgency tactics. Divide the opposition before they can organize. Can you stop it? Not without proof they can't ignore, which we're getting tonight. Be careful, son. They're playing for keeps." "So am I." Jack spent the day preparing. He backed up every photo, every document, every piece of evidence to 3 separate cloud accounts. He wrote out everything he knew, everything he'd learned, and emailed it to himself with instructions to forward to the FBI if he didn't log in for 72 hours. Dead man's switch. If something happened to him, the information would still get out. Then he cleaned weapons, checked ammunition, prepared like he was going back outside the wire. Because in a way, he was. At 10:45 p.m., Jack loaded Axel into the truck, along with the sample collection kit, 3 cameras, 2 voice recorders, and the Mossberg. He drove to his western property line, parked with the headlights off, and waited. At 10:58, Mateo and Elena arrived. They had surveying equipment, documentation materials, and something else, a drone with a camera. "Got it from my cousin," Mateo said. "Thought we could get aerial footage of the pipe in the plant. Show the connection." "Good thinking." Jack handed them each a voice recorder. "Keep these running the whole time. Document what we find, what we see, timestamps on everything. If this goes to court, we need it airtight." Elena looked scared but determined. "Let's do this." They moved through the darkness toward the creek. The moon was half full, giving just enough light to see. Axel stayed close to Jack, alert but silent. When they reached the hidden pipe, Jack set up the first camera on a tripod aimed at the concrete structure. Mateo launched the drone, sent it up for aerial shots. Elena started logging everything in a field notebook: date, time, location coordinates, weather conditions. Jack pulled on sterile gloves, opened the first sample container, and approached the pipe. Clear liquid was seeping out, forming a small pool before trickling into the creek. He collected water directly from the pipe outlet, sealed it, labeled. It had Elena photograph him doing it. Then he moved downstream, collected creek water samples at 3 different points. Finally, he used a small trowel to collect soil samples from around the pipe structure. The whole process took 20 minutes. Professional, documented, airtight. Mateo brought the drone back down, checked the footage. "Got everything. Clear shots of the pipe, the creek, the angle back toward the plant. Can even see their facility lights in the frame." "Good." Jack started packing up the samples. "Now we..." Axel growled low, then barked. Alert posture focused on something beyond the fence. Jack's blood went cold. Kill the lights. Now. They dropped into darkness. Jack pulled out night vision binoculars, scanned the area beyond the fence. 2 figures, moving parallel to the property line. Security patrol from Prairie Chem. Jack watched them for 30 seconds. They were walking a regular route, checking the fence line. If they looked toward Jack's property, they might see the equipment, might investigate. We need to move, Jack whispered. Slow, quiet, leave nothing behind. They gathered equipment in silence. Elena held the sample case. Mateo had the cameras. Jack kept watch with the binoculars, tracking the security patrol's movement. The guards stopped. One pulled out a radio. Jack's gut clenched. Had they been spotted? But the guard was just checking in. Routine call. After 30 seconds, they moved on, continuing their patrol. Jack waited until they were out of sight. Go. Now. They moved back through the darkness to the vehicles, loaded everything in. Jack did a final check, nothing left behind, no evidence they'd been there except footprints that would fade with the next rain. We did it, Elena said, voice shaking. We actually did it. We collected samples, Jack corrected. Now comes the hard part, getting them tested by someone who can't be pressured or bought. And getting the results to people who'll do something about it. I might have a contact, Mateo said. Guy I knew in college works for the state EPA now, owes me a favor. If I can get these samples to him quietly, he might fast-track the testing. How soon? Few days maybe. He's in Lincoln. I could drive them up tomorrow. Do it. Jack pulled out his phone, checked the time. 11:47 p.m. But don't use your car. They might be tracking you. Rent something, pay cash, take back roads, and don't tell anyone where you're going. Mateo nodded. What will you do? I'm going to the press. Local papers might be compromised, but there's a reporter at the Omaha station who's done investigative pieces on corporate pollution before. If I can get her interested, get her looking at this story, it becomes harder for Prairie Chem to contain. They split up. Jack drove home with Axel and the backup samples, adrenaline still pumping. They'd done it. They had evidence. Now they just had to keep it safe long enough for it to matter. But as Jack pulled into his driveway, his headlights swept across something that made his blood freeze. His front door was open, and the house was on fire. Jack slammed the truck into park, grabbed the Mossberg, and ran toward the flames. Orange light poured through his front windows. Smoke billowed from under the doorframe. Axel was barking frantic, trying to jump out after him. Stay, Jack commanded. The dog obeyed, but kept barking, that combat alert that meant danger everywhere. Jack kicked the door open. Heat hit him like a physical blow. The living room was engulfed, couch-burning curtains, melting flames, crawling up the walls toward the ceiling. But something was wrong with the pattern. Too organized. Too deliberate. This wasn't an electrical fire. This was arson. Jack ran to the kitchen, grabbed the fire extinguisher, and started spraying. But even as he fought the flames, his mind was calculating. The samples were in the truck. The backup documents were in cloud storage. Everything critical was safe. They'd burned his house thinking they were destroying evidence. They didn't know they were already too late. Sirens wailed in the distance. Someone had called it in. Jack kept spraying until the extinguisher ran empty, then grabbed a blanket from the hallway closet, started beating at the flames. The heat was unbearable. Smoke filled his lungs. But he couldn't let it all burn, not because of the house, but because giving up felt like losing. Fire trucks arrived 6 minutes later. Firefighters pushed Jack back, took over with professional equipment. Within 20 minutes, they had it contained. The living room was destroyed, kitchen damaged, but the structure held. Fire chief came over, pulling off his helmet. You okay, son? Yeah, Jack coughed, lungs burning. Yeah, I'm good. Lucky we got here when we did. Much longer, and you'd have lost the whole place. The chief looked at the house, then at Jack. You got any idea how this started? Someone broke in and torched it. You sure about that? My door was locked when I left. It was open when I got back, and I saw accelerant patterns on the couch before you arrived. The chief was quiet for a long moment. I'll document it. But Jack, I gotta tell you, this is the third suspicious fire in 2 months involving people who've had disputes with Prairie Chem. And every time the investigation gets stalled at the county level, you might want to think about what that means. It means I'm getting close to something they're desperate to hide. Or it means you need to leave before they escalate further. The chief put his helmet back on. Your call. But I've been doing this job 30 years, and I've learned when to recognize a losing fight. The trucks pulled away. Jack stood in his driveway, covered in soot, watching smoke drift from his ruined house. Axel came over, pressed against his leg. Jack scratched the dog's head and felt cold determination settle deeper. They'd just made their biggest mistake. Because burning his house didn't scare him, it eliminated his reason to hold back. His phone rang. Mateo. Jack, thank God. I just heard, are you okay? I'm fine. The samples. Safe. I've got them. Leaving for Lincoln in an hour. Mateo's voice was tight with anger. They burned your house. They tried to. This is insane. Jack, maybe we should... Don't say it. Don't even think it. Jack's voice was hard. They just proved we're right. They don't burn houses over nothing. They burn houses because they're terrified of what we'll find. Silence on the line. Then, okay. I'll get these samples to my contact. But Jack, you can't stay there. It's not safe. I've slept in worse places. Jack looked at his damaged house. Just get those samples tested. I'll handle the rest. He hung up and called Dr. Ruiz. She answered on the first ring. Jack, I heard about the fire. I need your help. Jack, I can't. They threatened my license. I'm not asking you to go public. I'm asking you to keep Axel safe, just for a few days, until this is over. Jack's voice cracked. Please, he almost died once already. I can't risk him again. Dr. Ruiz was quiet. Jack could hear her breathing, weighing the decision. Finally, bring him to the clinic. Back door. 20 minutes. Thank you. Jack loaded Axel into the truck. The dog sensed something was wrong, kept trying to lick Jack's soot-covered face. It's okay, buddy. You're gonna stay with Dr. Ruiz for a bit. Keep her safe, yeah. At the clinic, Dr. Ruiz met them at the back entrance. She looked at Jack's burned clothes, his smoke-stained face. Dear God, are you hurt? Nothing serious, but they're escalating. I need to know Axel's somewhere they can't reach him. Dr. Ruiz took Axel's leash. The dog looked back at Jack uncertain. Go on, Jack said. I'll come get you soon, promise. The door closed. Jack stood alone in the parking lot, feeling the weight of what he'd just done. Axel had been with him through everything 3 deployments, the divorce, the nightmares, the slow rebuilding of a life. Sending him away felt like cutting off his own arm. But it was the right call. Because what was coming next would get uglier, and Jack couldn't fight if he was worried about protecting his dog. He drove back to the house parked in the driveway and just sat there. The adrenaline was wearing off. Exhaustion hit like a wave. His hands started shaking again, not from fear from the crash after sustained combat stress. He'd felt this before, after firefights that lasted hours. The body's way of saying, you pushed too hard. Jack forced himself to breathe. In for 4. Hold for 4. Out for 4. The technique they'd taught him at the VA. It helped, a little. His phone buzzed. Text from unknown number. Consider this your final warning. Jack stared at the message. Then he typed back. Warning received. Here's mine. I've got samples tested by the state EPA drone footage of your illegal discharge pipe and medical records spanning 3 years. You just gave me arson on top of environmental crimes. Every move you make from here digs you deeper. So bring it. I'm not going anywhere. He hit send and waited. 3 minutes later, his phone rang. Not a text, an actual call. Same unknown number. Jack answered. Yeah. A man's voice. Older. Confident. Not electronically distorted this time. Mr. Mercer, my name is Richard Vance. I'm the regional director for Prairie Chem. I think we should talk. I don't negotiate with criminals. Strong words from a man whose house just burned down. But I'm not calling to threaten you. I'm calling to offer a solution. Vance's tone was smooth, practiced. The voice of someone used to getting what he wanted. You're a veteran. You served your country with distinction. I respect that. So I'm going to be straight with you. You're in over your head. The samples you collected tonight, they don't prove anything actionable. The medical records, circumstantial at best. You're tilting at windmills. Then why are you calling? Because I'd rather resolve this like civilized people than watch you destroy yourself. So here's my offer, $100,000. Cash. Tax-free. You sign an NDA, you leave the state, and we all move on with our lives. No one else gets hurt. Jack felt rage building. How many people have you made that offer to? Excuse me. How many families have you paid off? How many people have you silenced? Jack's voice was cold. You're not offering me money. You're trying to buy my complicity in poisoning children. And you think I'll take it, because what I need cash, I look desperate. I think you're a pragmatist who understands the difference between fighting battles you can win and dying on hills that don't matter. This hill matters. Those kids matter. And I'm not dying on it, you are. Silence on the line. Then Vance's voice changed. The smoothness gone, replaced by something harder. Then you're a fool. And fools don't survive long in situations like this. Is that another threat? That's a fact. Ask the Hendersons. Ask the Patels. Ask anyone who's tried to stand against us. Vance's voice was ice. You have 24 hours to reconsider. After that, I can't protect you from what comes next. I don't need your protection. Click. Jack sat there holding his phone, pulse racing. Vance had just admitted everything, the pattern of payoffs, the history of running people out of town, the systematic cover-up. And he'd done it because he was confident Jack couldn't prove it. But what Vance didn't know was that Jack had recorded the entire conversation. He pulled up the recording app he'd activated before answering. Crystal clear audio. Vance's voice. Vance's name. Vance admitting to paying off families, threatening Jack, acknowledging the company's history of silencing critics. This was gold. This was the kind of evidence that could turn a civil case into a criminal investigation. Jack backed up the recording to all 3 cloud accounts, then sent a copy to Mateo with instructions, if anything happens to me, release this everywhere. But Jack knew better than to celebrate. Because cornered animals were dangerous, and he'd just cornered a billion-dollar corporation with everything to lose. He needed to move fast, get ahead of whatever they'd throw at him next. Because Vance's 24-hour deadline wasn't real, the real attack was already being planned. Jack pulled out his laptop, started drafting an email to the Omaha reporter he'd researched earlier. Jennifer Martinez, investigative journalist, 3 awards for environmental coverage. He attached the recording, the photos of the pipe, the documentation from the Garzas, and a summary of everything he'd found. Subject line: corporate poisoning of Nebraska families, evidence attached. His finger hovered over send. Once he pressed it, there was no going back. The story would be out there. Prairie Chem would know exactly what he had. They'd come at him with everything. But holding back meant more families getting sick. More kids on medication they shouldn't need. More people forced off land their families had worked for generations. Jack pressed send. The email disappeared into the digital void. Either Martinez would see it and investigate, or she'd ignore it like everyone else had. Either way, Jack had tried. Now he needed to prepare for what came next. He grabbed a duffel bag from his truck, packed what he could salvage from the house. Clean clothes, toiletries, the few documents that hadn't burned. His discharge papers, photos of Axel. Nothing else mattered. Then he did a thorough sweep of the property. The barn was untouched. They'd focused on the house. His tools were still there. So was his truck. So was the Mossberg and ammunition. Jack loaded everything critical into the truck. If he had to run, he'd be ready. If he had to fight, he'd be armed. If he had to do both, he'd adapt. But what he wouldn't do was quit. At 3:47 a.m., exhausted beyond measure, Jack finally lay down in the truck bed with a sleeping bag. Not comfortable, but defensible. He could see the driveway, the road, and anyone approaching. The Mossberg was within arm's reach. He closed his eyes and tried to sleep, but his mind wouldn't stop racing. Combat memories mixed with present danger. Kandahar streets mixed with Nebraska farmland. The faces of soldiers he'd served with mixed with the faces of Mateo Elena, their 7-year-old daughter on medication she shouldn't need. Jack's phone buzzed. He grabbed it expecting another threat. Instead, it was an email notification from Jennifer Martinez. Subject: Recorporate poisoning of Nebraska family's evidence attached. Jack's heart hammered. He opened it. Mr. Mercer, I received your email and reviewed the materials. This is exactly the kind of story I've been trying to break for 2 years. I have sources inside the state EPA who've been saying something's wrong in your county but couldn't get evidence. Can you meet me tomorrow? I'm driving down from Omaha. There's a diner in Hartwell Ruby's on Main Street. 9 a.m. Come alone and bring anything else you have. This could be big. J.M. Jack stared at the email. Hope mixed with suspicion. Could be legitimate. Could be a trap. Could be Prairie Chem found out he'd contacted her and sent this to lure him into an ambush. But if it was real, if Martinez was legitimate, this was the break he needed. A journalist with reach, with credibility, with the ability to get the story out to people who couldn't be bought or intimidated. Jack typed back, I'll be there. But if this is a setup, know that I've sent copies of everything to multiple sources with instructions to release if anything happens to me. Dead man's switch is armed. He hit send, then set an alarm for 7 a.m. 3 hours of sleep. Not enough, but better than nothing. But Jack's mind had other plans, because now he was thinking about all the ways this could go wrong. Martinez could be legitimate but followed. The diner could be under surveillance. Prairie Chem could grab him on the way there, or they could go after Mateo while Jack was distracted. He needed insurance, something that would guarantee his safety long enough to get the story out. Jack grabbed his laptop again, opened a fresh document, and started typing. Everything he knew, everything he'd found. Names, dates, locations, evidence. The full timeline from buying the property to tonight's arson. Vance's phone call transcribed word for word. The medical records, the water tests, the pattern of families driven out. He wrote for an hour straight, building a comprehensive case file that anyone could follow. Then he uploaded it to a document sharing site with a timer. If Jack didn't reset it every 24 hours, the document would automatically email itself to the FBI, the EPA, and every major news outlet in Nebraska. Dead Man Switch version 2.0. By the time Jack finished, dawn was breaking. He was too wired to sleep now. Instead, he made instant coffee with bottled water, heated over a camping stove, drank it black and bitter, and watched the sun come up over his burned house. 24 hours ago, he'd been collecting samples. 12 hours ago, his house had been on fire. Now he was about to meet a reporter who could either save this fight or lead him into a trap. But what choice did he have? Standing still meant losing. Moving forward meant risk. And Jack had learned a long time ago that the only way out was through. At 7:30, his phone rang. Mateo. Jack, we got a problem. Jack's gut clenched. What happened? Someone broke into Elena's classroom last night, trashed her desk, left a note that said traitors get what they deserve. She's terrified. Doesn't want to go back. Doesn't want our daughter going to school there. Mateo's voice was shaking. They're going after our kid Jack, our 7-year-old. Rage flooded through Jack, cold and absolute. Did you call the police? Of course. They said they'd look into it. You know what that means. Mateo took a shaky breath. Elena wants to stop. Take the payoff if they offer it. Just make this go away. And I can't blame her, we're talking about our daughter's safety. Where are the samples? With my contact in Lincoln, he's running the tests. Said he'd have preliminary results by tomorrow. Then we're almost there. One more day. Jack checked his watch. I'm meeting a reporter this morning. If she runs the story, if it goes public, Prairie Chem can't touch you without proving everything we're saying. The attention will protect you. And if she doesn't run it? Jack was quiet. Because that was the question, wasn't it? If Martinez didn't bite, if the story didn't break, then what Mateo and Elena would be exposed vulnerable with a 7-year-old daughter in the crosshairs. Then I'll figure something else out, Jack said. But Mateo, I need you to trust me for one more day. Can you do that? Long pause. Elena's not going to like this. I know, but I promise you, no matter what happens, I won't let them hurt your family. You have my word. Your word against a billion-dollar corporation. My word backed by evidence they can't hide anymore. Jack's voice was hard. They're escalating because they're desperate. Desperate people make mistakes, and we're going to use those mistakes to bury them. Mateo exhaled slow. Okay, one more day. But Jack, if this goes south, if my family gets hurt because I trusted you, I'll never forgive you. If your family gets hurt, I'll never forgive myself. They hung up. Jack sat there feeling the weight of what he'd just promised. He'd made a lot of promises in his life. Some he'd kept. Some had been taken out of his hands by circumstances beyond his control. But this one, he'd keep or die trying. At 8:45, Jack drove into Hartwell. The town was small, maybe 3,000 people, one main street, a few churches, a lot of empty storefronts. Ruby's Diner sat between a closed hardware store and a laundromat. Red vinyl booths visible through the window. Coffee pot on every table. The kind of place where everyone knew everyone and strangers stood out. Jack parked across the street where he could watch the entrance. Scanned for threats. 3 cars in the diner's lot. One he recognized, Hank Dwyer's F-150. 2 he didn't. No black SUVs. No obvious surveillance. But that didn't mean it wasn't there. Jack waited until 8:58, then crossed the street and walked in. The bell over the door jangled. Every head turned to look. Jack counted 7 people inside. Hank at the counter nursing coffee. An older couple in the back booth. A trucker at a table near the window. And a woman sitting alone in the middle booth, laptop, open phone beside her, brown hair, pulled back, sharp eyes that assessed Jack the moment he walked in. Jennifer Martinez. Had to be. Jack walked over. Ms. Martinez. Mr. Mercer. She gestured to the seat across from her. Thanks for coming. Coffee. Black. She waved at the waitress who brought over a pot and a mug without being asked. Small-town service. Jack poured himself a cup, aware that everyone in the diner was still watching. So, Martinez said quietly, tell me why I drove 3 hours to meet a man whose house burned down last night under suspicious circumstances. Jack pulled out his phone, set it on the table. Because I have evidence of systematic environmental poisoning by Prairie Chem, and last night they tried to destroy it by burning my house. That's a serious accusation. I have serious evidence. Jack showed her the photos of the pipe that discharged the creek. Then he played the recording of Vance's phone call. Martinez listened, her expression neutral. When it finished, she leaned back. Do you know what you're sitting on? A career-ending lawsuit if I'm wrong. A criminal conspiracy if I'm right. Not just a lawsuit. This is federal crimes, EPA violations, potential RICO charges if you can prove systematic cover-up. Martinez's eyes were sharp, now focused. But here's the thing, Mr. Mercer, I've covered corporate malfeasance for 10 years. I know how these stories go. You give me this evidence, I write the story, and before it even prints, Prairie Chem buries you in legal action. They'll sue for defamation. They'll get injunctions. They'll paint you as a disgruntled veteran with an axe to grind. And unless your evidence is absolutely bulletproof, they'll win. The samples are being tested by the state EPA right now. Who's your contact? Friend of a friend. Guy named... Jack stopped. If Martinez was compromised, giving her the name would put Mateo's contact at risk. I'd rather not say until the results come back. Martinez nodded, respecting the boundary. Smart. But here's what I need: chain of custody documentation. Timestamps. Witnesses. The kind of evidence that would hold up in court, not just in a news story. She pulled out a recorder. Start from the beginning. Tell me everything. So Jack did. He told her about buying the farm, about Axel drinking from the creek, about finding the pipe. He told her about Dr. Ruiz's medical records, about the Garza's contaminated well, about families forced out. He told her about the sheriff's visit, about the 4 men who'd tried to intimidate him about his house burning. Martinez took notes, asked sharp questions, recorded everything. And Jack could see her journalist instincts kicking in. This wasn't just a story, it was the story. The kind that won awards and changed laws. But there was something else in her expression too. Concern. Maybe fear. Jack, she said when he finished, you understand what you're up against, right? Prairie Chem isn't just some local factory. They're owned by Meridian Chemical Corp., a Fortune 500 company with more lawyers than most towns have people. If I run this story, they will come after both of us with everything they have. I know. And you're okay with that. I'm not okay with kids getting poisoned while adults look the other way because they're scared. Jack met her eyes. Are you... Martinez was quiet for a long moment. Then she closed her laptop. Give me 24 hours. I need to verify what I can talk to my sources at the EPA, build out the story. If the test results come back showing what you think they'll show, I'll run it. Front page above the fold with every piece of evidence we have. And if Prairie Chem tries to stop you, then I go to the national outlets. This is too big to suppress. Martinez extended her hand. But Jack, be careful. These people are dangerous. They've already burned your house. They won't stop there. I'm counting on it. They shook hands. Martinez left first, walking out to a practical sedan that screamed, "Working journalist." Jack waited 5 minutes, watching through the window to see if anyone followed her. No movement, no obvious tail. He paid for the coffee, left a good tip, and walked out right into Sheriff Brody. Mr. Mercer. Brody blocked his path to the truck. Heard you had some excitement last night. Someone burned my house. So I heard. Fire marshal's looking into it. Don't bother. We both know he won't find anything. Brody's eyes hardened. That's a serious accusation. Is it? Or is it just stating facts? Jack stepped around him, hand close to the concealed pistol he'd started carrying. Now if you'll excuse me, I've got things to do. Like meeting with out-of-town journalists, Brody called after him. Making wild accusations to people who don't understand this community. Jack stopped, turned back. Is there something you want to say to me, Sheriff? Just a friendly observation. People who try to destroy this town's biggest employer usually end up regretting it. For their own safety, they tend to move on before things get worse. Is that a threat? That's me doing my job, keeping the peace. Brody smiled, but it was cold. Have a good day, Mr. Mercer. Jack climbed into his truck, drove away, and felt the noose tightening. Martinez was in. The samples were being tested. The story was coming together. But time was running out, because Brody had just confirmed that they knew about Martinez, which meant they'd known about the meeting, which meant either the diner was bugged or someone inside had tipped them off. Jack's mind raced through the possibilities. The waitress, the trucker, the older couple. Or was it simpler? Maybe Brody had a deputy watching rubies, noting everyone who came and went. Didn't matter. What mattered was that Prairie Chem now knew a journalist was involved, and they'd escalate before the story could run. Jack's phone buzzed. Text from Mateo. Test results are back. You need to see these. Can you come to my place? Jack's pulse kicked up. On my way. 20 minutes. He drove fast, checking his mirrors constantly for a tail. Nothing obvious. But that didn't mean they weren't there. They could be using multiple vehicles, rotating them to avoid detection. Standard surveillance technique. When Jack pulled into the Garza farm, Mateo was waiting outside, papers in his hand, face grim. "What did you find?" Jack asked, climbing out of the truck. Mateo handed him the papers. "Read it." Jack scanned the results. Trichloroethylene, 340 parts per billion. EPA limit 5 ppb. Benzene 180 ppb. EPA limit 5 ppb. Vinyl chloride, 290 ppb. EPA limit 2 ppb. The numbers went on. Chemical after chemical, all at levels dozens to hundreds of times above legal limits. Some of them known carcinogens, some neurotoxins, all of them in the water that had nearly killed Axel, that ran through farms where families lived and worked and raised children. "Dear God," Jack said quietly. "It gets worse." Mateo flipped to the second page. The soil samples show the same chemicals, which means this isn't a recent spill, it's been going on for years. The contamination has saturated the ground. It's in the water table. It's in the irrigation systems. It's everywhere. Jack felt rage and vindication in equal measure. This is it. This is the proof we needed. "My contact at the EPA says these levels constitute an immediate public health emergency. He's filing an official report today. Says he has to legally obligated once contamination reaches this severity." "Will Prairie Chem find out?" "Probably. But at this point it doesn't matter. The EPA has to investigate. They have to test. And once they do, everything we've been saying gets confirmed by federal authority." Mateo's expression was fierce. "We did it, Jack. We actually did it." But Jack's combat instincts were screaming, because this was the moment when the enemy was most dangerous, when they had nothing left to lose. "Mateo, listen to me very carefully. Take Elena and your daughter and leave. Today. Go to family out of state, somewhere Prairie Chem can't reach you. Don't come back until this is over." "I'm not running." "This isn't running. This is protecting your family while the system does its job." Jack gripped his shoulder. "The EPA report will trigger an investigation. Martinez is running the story. This thing is bigger than us now. But in the next 48 hours before it goes fully public, Prairie Chem is going to do whatever it takes to contain the damage. That means going after everyone involved. And you have a 7-year-old daughter who's already been threatened." Mateo looked back at his house where Elena was visible through the window holding their daughter. "You really think they'd hurt a child?" "I think desperate people do desperate things, and right now they're cornered." Jack's voice was hard. "Please, get your family to safety. I'll hold the line here." Mateo was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded. "Okay. We'll go to Elena's sister in Colorado. Leave tonight." He looked at Jack. "But what about you?" "I'll be fine. I've been in worse situations." "Have you?" Jack thought about firefights in Kandahar, about IEDs that killed friends, about missions that went wrong, and the hard choices that followed. "Yeah," he said quietly. "I have." They shook hands. Mateo went inside to talk to Elena. Jack stood in the driveway looking at the cheerful yellow house where a family was being forced to flee their own home because a corporation valued profits over human life. His phone rang. Unknown number again. Jack answered. "What?" Richard Vance's voice. But different now. Colder. Harder. "You just made the biggest mistake of your life, Mercer. I tried to be reasonable. I offered you a way out. You chose to spit in my face. You chose to poison families. I just chose to stop you. You think you've won because you got some test results. You think one journalist and one corrupt EPA employee is enough to take us down." Vance's laugh was bitter. "We've been doing this for 20 years. We've survived bigger threats than you. And we'll survive this one. Those test results are going to federal investigators. Your illegal discharge pipe is documented. Your systematic cover-up is on record. You're done." "No. You're done." Vance's voice dropped to a whisper. That dog you love so much. The one staying at Dr. Ruiz's clinic. We know where he is. Jack's blood went ice cold. If you touch him, you'll what? You're one man with a vendetta and a handful of circumstantial evidence. We're a billion-dollar corporation with resources you can't imagine. So here's how this ends. You get in your truck, you drive to the border, and you never come back. You do that, and your dog lives. Dr. Ruiz keeps her license. The Garza's daughter stays safe. Everyone walks away. And the families you poisoned. Collateral damage in the cost of doing business. Not personal, just economics. Vance paused. You have 1 hour to decide. After that, I can't control what my people do. The line went dead. Jack stood there, phone in hand, feeling the world narrow to a single point of absolute clarity. They'd just threatened Axel. They'd gone after the one thing Jack cared about more than the fight itself. It was the worst mistake they could have made. Because now, this wasn't about justice or accountability or doing the right thing. Now, it was personal. And when it got personal, Jack stopped thinking like a citizen and started thinking like a soldier. He called Dr. Ruiz. She answered on the second ring. Jack, lock the doors. Don't let anyone in except me. And get Axel ready to move. We're leaving in 30 minutes. What's happening? They know where he is. They're coming for him. Jack was already getting in his truck, starting the engine. I'm on my way. Do not open that door for anyone. He hung up and drove. Fast. Too fast. But speed mattered now because every second counted. But what Jack didn't know, what he couldn't have known, was that 2 men in a white van were already parked behind the clinic, watching the back entrance, waiting for their moment. And inside the clinic, Dr. Ruiz was about to face a choice that would define everything that came after. Jack was 3 miles from the clinic when his phone rang again. Dr. Ruiz. Her voice was shaking. Jack, there's a van in the back parking lot. 2 men. They're just sitting there watching the building. Did they try to come in? Not yet, but Jack, I'm scared. I don't know what to... Listen to me. Go to the front desk. Act normal. If they come to the door, tell them the clinic is closed for emergency repairs. Do not let them inside. Do not engage. I'm 2 minutes away. What if they don't leave? Then stall them until I get there. Jack's voice was hard. You're going to be okay, I promise. He hung up and pushed the truck faster. 90 miles per hour on a county road built for 50. The engine screamed. His knuckles were white on the steering wheel. But what scared him most was the calm settling over him. The same cold calculation he'd felt before raids overseas. The switch in his brain that turned off fear and turned on something else, something efficient and ruthless and willing to do whatever it took. He'd promised himself after discharge that he'd never flip that switch again. That he'd leave that part of himself buried in the desert where it belonged. Looked like he'd broken that promise. Jack pulled into the clinic parking lot and saw the white van immediately. Parked at the back, engine running, 2 shapes visible in the front seats. They turned to look at his truck. One reached for something, radio or phone. Jack didn't give them time to decide. He parked directly behind the van, blocking their exit, and climbed out with the Mossberg visible. Not raised, not threatening, just present. The van's doors opened. 2 men climbed out. Both big. Both moving like they'd done this before. The one on the left had a tire iron. The one on the right had nothing visible but his jacket hung wrong, concealed carry. You need to move your truck, the left one said. You're blocking us in. I know. Jack's voice was calm. That's intentional. We don't want trouble. Then leave. Drive away. Don't come back. The 2 men exchanged glances. The one with the tire iron smiled. See, we can't do that. We've got business here. What business? The kind that doesn't concern you. The man took a step forward. Now move the truck before this gets ugly. Jack chambered around in the Mossberg. The sound echoed across the parking lot. It's already ugly. Question is whether it gets deadly. The man stopped. His partner's hand moved toward his jacket. You're making a big mistake, friend. I'm not your friend, and the only mistake here is you thinking I won't pull this trigger. Jack's eyes were cold. I've done it before. Different country, different reasons, same outcome. So you need to ask yourself, are you getting paid enough to die in a veterinary clinic parking lot? The tension stretched. 5 seconds. 10. Jack could see them calculating odds, weighing options. They were hired muscle, not true believers, and hired muscle didn't get paid if they were dead. Finally, the one with the tire iron lowered it. This isn't over. Yeah, it is. You just don't know it yet. Jack kept the Mossberg level. Get in the van. Drive away. Tell whoever sent you that Axel's off limits. You want to come after me, fine, but you leave the dog alone. They climbed back into the van. The engine revved. Jack stepped aside just enough to let them back out, keeping the shotgun visible the whole time. The van pulled away fast, tires squealing. Jack watched until they were out of sight, then sagged against his truck. His hands were shaking again. Not from fear from the adrenaline dump after sustained threat response. He'd been ready to shoot them, fully prepared. And part of him had wanted to send a message. That scared him more than the confrontation itself. The clinic's back door opened. Dr. Ruiz stood there pale with Axel beside her. The dog saw Jack and barked, straining against the leash. It's okay, Jack called. They're gone. Dr. Ruiz walked over Axel, pulling her along. The dog jumped up on Jack, nearly knocking him over, licking his face. Jack grabbed him, held him close, felt some of the cold fury drain away. Hey buddy, I've got you. You're safe. Jack. Dr. Ruiz's voice was barely above a whisper. What have we gotten into? Something that should have been stopped years ago. Jack straightened, kept one hand on Axel's head. I need to get him somewhere they can't find him. Somewhere off the grid. Where? I don't know yet, but I'll figure it out. Jack looked at her. Did they threaten you directly? No, they just sat there watching. But Jack, they knew. They knew Axel was here, which means they're watching everyone connected to this. Yumi the Garzas, probably Martinez too. Jack's mind was racing through options. You need to close the clinic, take a few days off. Go somewhere public, family, friends, somewhere with witnesses. Don't be alone. I can't just close. I have patients' appointments. Lena. He used her first name deliberately. They burned my house. They sent men with weapons to your clinic. This isn't stopping, not until either we win or they eliminate everyone who knows too much. He met her eyes. Please, protect yourself. She was quiet for a long moment, then nodded. I'll call my sister in Denver. I can stay there for a few days. But Jack, what about you? I'll be fine. I'm harder to kill than I look. That's not reassuring. It's not meant to be reassuring. It's meant to be honest. Jack opened his truck door, helped Axel jump in. Thank you for everything, for saving him, for keeping him safe, for not backing down when they threatened you. I backed down a little, she admitted. You're still here. That counts. Jack climbed into the driver's seat. When this is over, when the story breaks and the EPA comes in, and Prairie Chem's executives are in handcuffs, you can say you were part of it. You helped stop them. If we survive that long, we will. Because they're fighting to protect profits, and we're fighting to protect people. That's not the same weight. Jack started the engine. Stay safe, Lena. He drove away, Axel beside him, and tried to figure out his next move. The test results were with the EPA. Martinez had the story. The evidence was documented and backed up in multiple locations. Everything was in motion. But Jack was running out of safe places. His house was burned. The clinic was compromised. The Garzas were leaving town. Where could he go that Prairie Chem couldn't reach? His phone buzzed. Text from Hank Dwyer. Heard what happened at the clinic. You and that dog can stay at my place. They won't look for you here. Got spare room and enough guns to make them reconsider if they do. Jack felt something loosen in his chest. He texted back, "On my way. Thank you." Hank's farm was south away from the Prairie Chem facility on the opposite end of the county. Older property, well maintained, with a house that had been standing since the 1940s. Hank met Jack in the driveway, holding a hunting rifle like it was an extension of his arm. "Figured you could use a friendly face," Hank said. "And some backup. I don't want to put you in danger." "Son, I'm 83 years old. I've survived the Korean War, 3 heart attacks, and 57 years of marriage. If Prairie Chem wants to come after me, they're welcome to try." Hank gestured toward the house. "Come on. Got coffee brewing and a safe place for your dog." Inside the house was warm and lived in. Photos on the walls. Hank in uniform. Hank with his wife. Hank with children and grandchildren. A life fully lived. A life worth protecting. Axel explored cautiously, then settled by the fireplace. Hank poured coffee, sat across from Jack at a scarred wooden table. "So, tell me where we're at." Jack filled him in. The test results. Martinez. The EPA report. Vance's threats. The men at the clinic. All of it. Hank listened without interrupting, his weathered face unreadable. When Jack finished, the old man nodded slowly. "You've kicked the hornet's nest good and proper. I know. Question is, are you prepared for what comes next? Because that company's got resources, lawyers, money, political connections. They're going to throw everything at you, legal, illegal, and everything in between. Let them come." That's what my nephew said, and they destroyed him without breaking a sweat. Hank leaned forward. "I'm not saying quit. I'm saying be smart. You've got evidence. You've got a journalist. You've got federal investigators getting involved. That's good. But you need to stay alive long enough for it to matter. That's the plan. Plans change when the bullets start flying. And make no mistake, this is war now. Just because it's happening in Nebraska instead of Afghanistan doesn't make it less deadly." Hank tapped the table for emphasis. "So here's what I'm thinking. You stay here tonight. Tomorrow, when the EPA report goes official and Martinez runs her story, you do every interview you can. Get your face out there. Get your story told to as many people as possible. Make yourself too visible to disappear quietly." "You think they'd try to kill me?" "I think they've already committed arson, assault, and witness intimidation. Murder's just the next step." Hank's voice was matter-of-fact. "But they can't kill someone if the whole state's watching, so you make yourself watched." Jack realized Hank was right. He'd been thinking tactically, protect the evidence, protect the people, protect himself. But Hank was thinking strategically. Control the narrative, weaponize publicity, use attention as armor. "You're a smart man, Hank. I'm an old man who's seen this playbook before. Used to be companies could disappear troublemakers without consequences. Can't do that anymore. Too many cameras, too much internet, too much accountability. So they've gotten subtler. But subtle doesn't work if you're standing in a spotlight." Hank refilled both their coffee cups. "Make them fight you in public. They'll lose." Jack's phone rang. "Martinez." "Jack, we need to talk. Where are you?" "Why?" "Because I just got off the phone with my editor. Prairie Chem's lawyers sent a cease and desist. They're threatening to sue the paper if we run your story. They're claiming defamation, that all your evidence is fabricated, that you're a troubled veteran with a history of—" She paused. "They sent over your military records, or at least parts of them. Redacted sections implying PTSD, disciplinary issues, unreliable testimony." Jack felt cold rage building. "That's all bullshit. My discharge was honorable. My record is clean." "I know, I checked. But they're creating a narrative, painting you as unreliable before your accusations can gain traction." Martinez's voice was tight. "My editor's getting nervous. He wants more corroboration before we run anything." "What about the EPA test results?" "Not official yet. Your friend's contact filed the report, but it hasn't been processed through channels. Could take days, maybe weeks. And Prairie Chem's lawyers know that they're trying to kill the story before the official results come through. Jack's mind raced. What if I give you another source, someone inside Prairie Chem who can confirm the cover-up? You have that? No, but I'm going to get it. Jack started pacing. Give me 24 hours. I'll get you something your editor can't ignore. Jack, I don't think you understand the pressure they're applying. They're threatening to pull advertising from the paper. They're calling in political favors. They're making this as painful as possible. Then we make it more painful for them. Jack's voice was hard. Run a different story first. Run the story about them threatening you. About them trying to suppress journalism. Make that the headline. Then when the evidence drops, it proves everything you're reporting. Martinez was quiet. That's actually brilliant. Frame it as a First Amendment issue, first environmental crime second. Exactly. And it gives me time to find someone on the inside who'll talk. And if you can't, then I'll break into their facility and get the evidence myself. That's insane. That's criminal trespass. Anything you find would be inadmissible. Don't care about admissible. I care about exposure. Jack checked his watch. Run the suppression story tomorrow morning. I'll have more by tomorrow night. Be careful, Jack. These people are dangerous. So am I. He hung up and turned to find Hank watching him. You're planning something stupid. I'm planning something necessary. Same thing in my experience. Hank walked to a closet, pulled out a tactical vest. This was my grandson's. He's army stationed in Germany. Left some of his gear here last Christmas. Might fit you. Jack took the vest, felt the weight of it. Kevlar. Load-bearing straps. Magazine pouches. The familiar equipment of someone who'd been in the field. Hank, don't thank me. Just don't get yourself killed wearing it. He'd be mad if I gave away his gear to a corpse. Hank pulled out more equipment. Also got night vision, a scanner for their security frequencies, and bolt cutters. Anything else you need? Why are you helping me? Hank was quiet for a long moment. Because my wife died 3 years ago. Lung cancer. Doctors couldn't explain it. She never smoked, lived clean her whole life. But she lived on this land for 50 years, and she drank that water every day. His voice cracked. Maybe it was just bad luck. Maybe it was age. Or maybe she was poisoned by chemicals leaking into our groundwater, while I stood by and did nothing because I was too scared to fight back. So no, Jack. I'm not helping you. I'm helping her. Making sure what happened to her doesn't happen to anyone else. Jack felt the weight of that, the responsibility. He wasn't just fighting for the Garzas or the abstract concept of justice. He was fighting for every person who'd been hurt. Every family destroyed. Every life cut short by corporate greed and systemic indifference. I won't let you down, Jack said quietly. I know you won't. Because you're a stubborn son of a bitch who doesn't know when to quit. Hank smiled. But there was sadness in it. Now get some rest. You're breaking into a chemical plant tonight, and you'll want to be sharp. Jack tried to sleep, but his mind wouldn't stop running scenarios. Building layouts. Security patterns. Entry points. Extraction routes. The same mental preparation he'd done before every mission overseas now applied to a facility in rural Nebraska. At 6 p.m., his phone buzzed. Text from Mateo. We're in Colorado. Safe. Thank you for everything. Elena says to tell you she's sorry for doubting you. Our daughter made you a drawing. I'll send it when things calm down. Stay safe, hermano. Jack stared at the message, felt something tight in his chest. A 7-year-old kid had drawn him a picture. A family had trusted him with their lives, and he'd gotten them to safety. That mattered. Whatever happened next, that mattered. At 8 p.m., Jack started gearing up. Tactical vest, dark clothes, equipment check, bolt cutters, night vision, phone on silent. The Mossberg stayed behind, too conspicuous. Instead, he took a concealed pistol, non-lethal if possible, but lethal if necessary. Hank watched him prepare. You sure about this? No, but I'm doing it anyway. Good answer. Hank handed him a printed satellite image of the Prairie Chem facility. Studied this while you were sleeping. Security changes shifts at 9. Got about a 10-minute gap when they're transitioning. That's your window. How do you know that? My nephew used to work there, remember? He told me things before they crushed him. Hank pointed at the map. Main plant is here. Administrative building is here. But what you want is the waste treatment facility back corner, less security, more isolated. That's where they'd keep records of what they're really dumping. Jack studied the map, memorizing routes. If I'm not back by midnight, call Martinez. Tell her everything. Give her the recordings, the photos, all of it. You'll be back. If I'm not, you will be. Hank's voice was firm. Because you've got too much left to do. And because that dog of yours will never forgive me if I let you die. At 8:45, Jack loaded Axel into Hank's house, gave him a command to stay in guard. The dog whined, sensing something wrong. I know, buddy, but I need you here. Keep Hank safe. Okay. Axel whined again, but settled by Hank's chair. Jack drove toward Prairie Chem, lights off, using back roads, parked a half-mile away in a copse of trees. Then he moved on foot, using the night vision to navigate. The facility loomed ahead, massive industrial lit by sodium lamps that turned everything orange. Fences, guard shacks, cameras. But Jack had infiltrated hardened targets before. This was just another mission. At 9:03, he reached the perimeter fence. Used the bolt cutters on a section hidden by overgrown brush. Slipped through. Moved low and fast toward the waste treatment building. A guard walked past, radio crackling. Jack froze behind a storage tank, barely breathing. The guard stopped, lit a cigarette, stood there for 2 minutes that felt like hours. Finally moved on. Jack reached the building. Door was locked. But the lock was commercial grade, not military. He'd been taught how to bypass these. Took him 90 seconds. Inside was dark, chemical smell, overwhelming. Industrial equipment, pipes, storage tanks, and in the back office, filing cabinets. Jack pulled out his phone, turned on the flashlight, and started documenting. Disposal logs, dates and times, chemical quantities, discharge records, and then jackpot internal emails about bypassing EPA monitoring, about falsifying reports, about paying off inspectors. He photographed everything, page after page, evidence so damning it couldn't be ignored. But then he heard voices outside. Multiple people. Radio chatter. Jack's heart hammered. They'd found the cut fence. They were doing a sweep. He looked around. No other exit. The office had one window, but it faced the interior compound. If he went out that way, he'd be visible to every camera and guard in the facility. The voices got closer. Footsteps on the stairs leading up to the office. Jack made a choice. He couldn't get caught with the evidence. If they took his phone, everything was lost. He opened his email, attached all the photos, typed Martinez's address, and hit send. The upload bar crawled. 30%. 40%. The footsteps reached the landing. 60%. The door handle started to turn. 80%. Jack dropped the phone, grabbed a pipe wrench from the wall, and positioned himself behind the door. 90%. The door opened. 100%. Sent. A guard stepped through, flashlight sweeping the room. Jack moved fast, bringing the wrench down on the man's wrist. The flashlight dropped. The guard yelled, reached for his radio. Jack grabbed him, put him in a chokehold, non-lethal but effective. The guard struggled for 15 seconds, then went limp. Jack lowered him to the floor, took his radio, and ran. Out the door, down the stairs, into the compound. Alarms started blaring. Lights flooded the area. Voices shouted. Jack ran toward the fence, toward the cut section, but guards were already converging on that position. He changed direction, heading for the loading docks. Maybe he could lose them in the trailer storage area. But more guards appeared, cutting off that route too. Jack was trapped. No way out. Multiple guards closing in. And he was unarmed except for the concealed pistol he'd promised himself he wouldn't use unless absolutely necessary. But then he saw it, a tanker truck parked near the waste facility, not actively being loaded but connected to the discharge system. The same system that fed the hidden pipe on his property. Jack made a split-second decision. He ran to the tanker, climbed up the ladder, opened the valve on top. Chemical smell flooded out. Toxic. Dangerous. The same chemicals that had nearly killed Axel, that had poisoned the Garza's well, that had driven families from their land. And it was all pouring out onto the ground, onto Prairie Chem's property, creating a hazmat situation they couldn't ignore or cover up. Guards stopped backing away from the spreading chemicals. Someone was screaming into a radio about containment and emergency response. Jack climbed down, ran through the chaos, reached the fence, and squeezed through the cut section. Behind him, sirens were already wailing. Fire trucks, hazmat teams, the whole response apparatus descending on the facility. He ran through the darkness to his truck, drove away on back roads with his lights off, and didn't stop shaking until he pulled into Hank's driveway. Hank met him at the door. "You crazy son of a bitch. What did you do?" "I got the evidence. And I created a situation they can't ignore." Jack's hands were trembling. "They'll have to report the spill. EPA will investigate the facility. Everything we've been saying gets confirmed." "And you—" "They saw me. They know someone broke in. But it was dark, I was moving fast, and I don't think any cameras got a clear shot." Jack pulled out his phone, the one he'd dropped, and then grabbed before running. "And I already sent everything to Martinez. Even if they catch me, the evidence is out there." His phone rang. Martinez. "Jack, I just got your email. Dear God, this is everything. Internal documents, falsified reports, emails about bribing officials. This is criminal conspiracy." Her voice was shaking with excitement. "I'm running this tonight. Front page web, first full investigation. My editor won't be able to say no." "Make it count," Jack said. "Because I just burned every bridge I have." "Oh, it'll count. Jack, you just handed me the biggest story of my career, the kind that changes laws and ends careers." She paused. "But you need to be careful. What you did tonight, breaking into their facility, that's a crime. They'll use it against you." "Let them. Sometimes you have to break small laws to expose big ones." Jack hung up and looked at Hank. The old man was smiling. "Your wife," Jack said. "I did this for her too." "I know you did, son. I know." They sat up the rest of the night drinking coffee, waiting for the story to drop. Axel stayed close to Jack, sensing his agitation. At 2 a.m., Martinez's article went live. The headline, "Nebraska Chemical Plant Accused of Systematic Poisoning. Company Threatens Press to Silence Whistleblowers." Jack read through it. Every detail documented. Every piece of evidence presented. The test results. The medical records. The internal documents. His story. The Garza's story. And most damning, the documents showing Prairie Chem knew about the contamination and actively covered it up. Within an hour, the story was trending. Social media lit up. Other news outlets picked it up. By 4 a.m., national networks were calling Martinez for interviews. The story was out. The truth was exposed. And Prairie Chem couldn't suppress it anymore. Jack's phone started buzzing with calls from unknown numbers. Reporters. He ignored them. But then one came through that made him answer. "Mr. Mercer." An official voice. "This is Special Agent Catherine Ross with the FBI. We need to talk about your allegations against Prairie Chem and several county officials. Can you meet with us this morning?" Jack felt something loosen in his chest. The FBI. Federal jurisdiction. Beyond Prairie Chem's reach. "Yeah," he said. "I can meet you. Where?" "Federal building in Lincoln, 9 a.m. Bring any evidence you haven't already released to the press." "I'll be there." He hung up and looked at Hank. "FBI wants to talk." "That's good, right?" "That's everything." Jack felt exhaustion hit him like a wave. It means they're taking this seriously. It means it's not just a local issue anymore, it's federal. Then you did it. You actually did it. But Jack didn't feel victorious. He felt tired, bone-deep tired, the kind that came from sustained stress and moral injury and doing hard things that needed doing. We did it, Jack corrected. You, me, the Garzas, Dr. Ruiz Mateos, EPA contact Martinez. All of us. But you were the one who wouldn't back down. You were the one who kept pushing when everyone else was too scared. Hank gripped his shoulder. That matters, son. Don't forget that. At 6 a.m., Jack's phone rang again. This time it was Sheriff Brody. Mercer. The sheriff's voice was tight. You need to come in. Got questions about the break-in at Prairie Chem last night. I'll come in, right after I meet with the FBI at 9. The FBI? Yeah. They want to talk about systematic corruption in your county. About how Prairie Chem's been buying off local officials for years. About how you've been protecting them instead of the people you swore to serve. Jack's voice was cold. You want to arrest me for trespassing, go ahead. But I'll be walking out with federal protection, and you'll be walking into an investigation. Silence. Then, I was just doing my job. Your job was to protect people. You failed. Jack hung up. What he didn't tell Brody was that Martinez's article had included details about the sheriff's campaign contributions, about the pattern of dismissed complaints, about the systematic way local law enforcement had enabled Prairie Chem's crimes. Brody's career was over. He just didn't know it yet. At 8 a.m., Jack left Axel with Hank and drove to Lincoln. Federal building. Security checkpoints. Everything official and procedural, and the opposite of the lawless chaos he'd been living in. Special Agent Ross met him in a conference room. Late 40s, sharp eyes, the kind of cop who'd seen everything and wasn't impressed by much. She had a partner with her younger guy taking notes. Mr. Mercer, thanks for coming in. Ross gestured to a chair. Let's start from the beginning. Tell me everything. So Jack did. From buying the farm, to finding the pipe, to collecting samples, to the threats and intimidation and arson. He gave them names, dates, evidence, showed them the photos, the recordings, the documents he'd photographed at the facility. Ross listened without interrupting. When Jack finished, she leaned back. This is one hell of a story. It's not a story. It's what happened. I know, and we're taking it seriously. She opened a folder. We've been watching Prairie Chem for 2 years. Had suspicions about environmental violations, but couldn't get enough evidence to move forward. You just gave us that evidence. So what happens now? Now we investigate. Federal warrants for their facility, their records, their executives' communications. EPA does a full environmental assessment. And we look into the local officials who enabled this, starting with Sheriff Brody. Ross met his eyes. But Jack, I need to be honest with you. The break-in last night, that complicates things. Prairie Chem's lawyers will use it to challenge any evidence you collected. I know, but it got the truth out. And sometimes that matters more than procedure. Maybe, but it also puts you at risk legally. Ross pulled out a business card. You need a lawyer, a good one, because Prairie Chem is going to come after you with everything they have. Let them come. They will. And Jack, she paused. What you did took guts, more than most people have. But it also took a toll. When this is over, when the investigations wrap up, and the trials happen, and the headlines fade, make sure you deal with that toll. Get help if you need it. Don't let this consume you. Jack nodded, but he wasn't sure he believed it. Because the truth was, this fight had given him purpose. It had given him a reason to wake up, a mission to complete a clear line between right and wrong. What happened when that was gone? He left the federal building at noon, drove back to Hartwell, and found the town transformed. News vans everywhere, reporters doing stand-ups, people on their phones reading the story, talking about it. Jack's truck was recognized. Cameras turned toward him, reporters rushed over. He kept driving, didn't stop, and made it to Hank's place with 3 news vans following him. Hank met him at the door with Axel. "You're famous." "I'm tired." "Same thing sometimes." Hank led him inside, closed the door on the reporters. "What did the FBI say?" "They're investigating. Federal warrants, full environmental review, and they're looking at Brody." "Good. He deserves it." Hank poured coffee. "So what now?" "Now we wait. Let the system do its job. Hope it actually works this time." But Jack's phone was already buzzing with new developments. Text from Mateo. "Just saw the news. You did it, hermano. You actually did it. Our daughter is safe because of you. Elena says thank you doesn't cover it, but thank you anyway." Text from Dr. Ruiz. "Patients are calling asking about water safety. Going to start doing free testing for anyone concerned. Finally feel like I can help without being threatened. Thank you, Jack." Email from Martinez. "Editor just told me we're submitting this for a Pulitzer. National outlets are picking it up. You've started something that won't stop. Be safe." Jack read through them all, feeling the weight of what he'd set in motion. This wasn't just about Prairie Chem anymore. It was about accountability, about what happened when regular people said enough. At 3 p.m., his phone rang. Unknown number. Jack almost didn't answer, but something made him. "Hello," Richard Vance's voice, but different now, defeated. "You won, Mercer, satisfied. This wasn't about winning. It was about stopping you from hurting people. We'll fight this. We have resources, lawyers, the best defense money can buy. You also have internal documents proving you knew about the contamination. You have emails showing you falsified reports. You have test results showing illegal dumping at levels that constitute criminal negligence." Jack's voice was calm. "You can fight it, but you'll lose, and you know it." Silence. Then, "I was just doing my job." "So was the sheriff. So were all the people you paid off or intimidated or destroyed. Doesn't make it right." Jack paused. "How many families, Vance? How many people got sick or died or lost everything because you wanted to save money on proper waste disposal?" It wasn't personal. It was to them. It was to the 7-year-old girl on medication for seizures. It was to the families forced off their land. It was to every person who trusted that their water was safe and their government was protecting them. Jack's voice hardened. "You want absolution, call a priest. Want sympathy. You're talking to the wrong guy. All I want is for you to face consequences for what you've done." Vance hung up. Jack sat there, phone in hand, and realized something. The anger was gone. The cold fury that had driven him for weeks had burned itself out. What remained was just tired determination to see this through. That evening, the story got bigger. Criminal charges filed. Federal investigation announced officially. EPA declaring the area a Superfund site. State officials calling for reviews of all chemical plants. National politicians demanding stricter regulations. Jack Mercer's name was everywhere. The veteran who stood up. The whistleblower who wouldn't back down. The David who took on Goliath and won. But Jack didn't feel like David. He felt like a guy who'd done what needed doing because no one else would. At 9 p.m. there was a knock on Hank's door. Jack tensed hand moving toward his weapon. But Hank looked through the window and smiled. "It's okay, it's for you." Jack opened the door. Mateo stood there, and Elena, and their daughter. They'd driven back from Colorado. "We wanted to thank you in person," Elena said. Her daughter held a piece of paper, a crayon drawing of a man with a dog. "She insisted on giving this to you herself." The little girl stepped forward, shy but determined. "This is you and Axel. You're heroes." Jack took the drawing, felt something crack in his chest. He knelt down to her level. "Thank you. This is the best thing anyone's ever given me. Mommy says we can stay home now, because you made the bad people stop." "Yeah," Jack said, voice rough. "You can stay home now." The family stayed for an hour talking about the future. About replanting their farm. About their daughter getting better. About hope returning to the county. After they left, Jack sat on Hank's porch with Axel looking at the drawing, feeling the weight of what they'd accomplished. Tomorrow would bring more interviews, more questions, more legal proceedings. But tonight, he just sat with his dog and let himself feel something he hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. Not the absence of trouble, but the presence of people who refuse to look away. And for now, that was enough. The peace lasted exactly 4 hours. Jack woke at 2 a.m. to Axel's low growl, the kind that meant threat close. He was off Hank's couch instantly, pistol in hand, moving to the window. 3 vehicles in the driveway. Not news vans this time. Black SUVs with tinted windows. Hank appeared from his bedroom, hunting rifle already loaded. Company. The wrong kind. Jack watched as doors opened. 6 men climbed out. Suits, not hired muscle corporate lawyers. But the 7th person made Jack's blood run cold. Richard Vance himself. "Stay inside," Jack told Hank. "Let me handle this." "Like hell. This is my property." Hank moved to the door, opened it before Jack could stop him. "You folks are trespassing. I suggest you leave before I exercise my Second Amendment rights." Vance stepped forward, hands visible, non-threatening. "Mr. Dwyer, Mr. Mercer, we're not here for violence. We're here to talk." "We've got nothing to say to you," Jack said from behind Hank. "I think you do. Because in approximately 6 hours, our legal team is filing a $50 million defamation lawsuit against you, Ms. Martinez, and anyone else involved in publishing false and damaging information about Prairie Chem." Vance's voice was calm, professional. "We're also filing criminal charges for breaking and entering, theft of proprietary documents, and industrial sabotage related to the chemical spill you caused last night." Jack felt his stomach drop, but kept his face neutral. "Those documents prove you've been poisoning people for years. Those documents were obtained illegally and will be inadmissible in any court, which means your entire case collapses. The EPA test results. We're challenging the chain of custody, the medical records circumstantial, the witness testimony hearsay from people with financial motives to sue." Vance smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "We've done this before, Mr. Mercer. We know how to win." "Then why are you here?" Hank demanded. "If you're so confident, why show up at 2 a.m.? "Because despite everything, I'd rather avoid a protracted legal battle that costs everyone time and money. So I'm making one final offer." Vance pulled an envelope from his jacket. $250,000, tax-free. You sign a settlement agreement, you retract your statements, and you disappear. Ms. Martinez issues a correction. The EPA investigation gets quietly shelved due to procedural irregularities, and everyone moves on. Jack stared at the envelope. $250,000. More money than he'd see in 5 years. Enough to rebuild his house, start over somewhere else, live comfortably. All he had to do was lie. Say he was wrong. Let Prairie Chem keep poisoning people. "No," Jack said. Vance's expression didn't change. "You should think carefully about this. We will destroy you in court. We will bankrupt you with legal fees. We will ensure you never work again. Your veteran status won't protect you. We'll paint you as unstable, dangerous, a man with PTSD who became obsessed with a conspiracy that doesn't exist." "It does exist. I have proof. Illegally obtained proof that no judge will allow." Vance took a step closer. "Jack, be realistic. You're one man with limited resources going against a corporation with unlimited funds and political connections. You can't win. The best you can do is walk away with some money and your dignity intact." "My dignity isn't for sale." Jack's voice was cold. "And neither is the truth." "Then you're a fool." Vance turned to leave, then stopped. "One more thing. The FBI investigation, we're challenging it on procedural grounds, claiming the evidence was tainted by your illegal actions. Our lawyers are already in contact with federal prosecutors. By the end of the week, they'll have to drop the case or risk losing it entirely. You can't just make a federal investigation disappear. Watch us." Vance climbed back into the SUV. "You have 24 hours to reconsider. After that, the lawsuits proceed and we come at you with everything we have. Sleep well, Mr. Mercer." The vehicles pulled away. Jack stood in the doorway, feeling the foundation shift under his feet. Everything he'd fought for, everything he'd risked, could it really be dismantled by lawyers and procedural challenges? "They're bluffing," Hank said. "Have to be." "Maybe. Or maybe they actually can kill a federal investigation." Jack closed the door, sank onto the couch. Axel pressed against his leg. "I've seen it before, overseas. Corrupt officials protected by diplomatic immunity, evidence that disappeared, justice that never came because the people with power decided it was inconvenient. This is America. It's different here." "Is it?" Jack looked at Hank. "Your nephew tried to report them. What happened?" "The Garzas tried to get justice." "What happened?" "How many families have been crushed by Prairie Chem over the years because money talks louder than truth?" Hank was quiet, because they both knew the answer. Jack's phone buzzed. Text from Martinez at 2:37 a.m. "Just got served with papers. They're suing me, and the paper for $50. Editor is freaking out. Might have to retract the story. I'm so sorry, Jack." Jack stared at the message. Then another came through, this one from Special Agent Ross. "Need to talk. Call me when you're up." Jack called immediately. Ross answered on the first ring. "Jack, bad news. Prairie Chem's lawyers are challenging every piece of evidence. They're claiming you tainted the investigation with illegal actions. My supervisors are getting pressure from above to back off." "What kind of pressure?" "The kind that comes from senators whose campaigns are funded by Meridian Chemical Corp. The kind that comes from judges who have financial ties to the company. The kind that makes federal investigations go away quietly." Ross's voice was tight with frustration. "I've been an agent for 20 years. I've never seen anything shut down this fast. They have connections I didn't know existed." "So what are you saying the investigation's over?" "I'm saying it's stalled. Maybe permanently." Ross paused. "Jack, I believe you. I believe everything you found is real. But belief doesn't matter if I can't build a case that survives their legal challenges. And right now, I can't." "What about the EPA report? The test results showing contamination levels hundreds of times above legal limits." "They're challenging the methodology, claiming your friend's contact wasn't properly authorized to collect samples, saying the results are unreliable." Ross's voice dropped. "Jack, they're not just fighting this in court. They're fighting it in back rooms and phone calls and political pressure, and they're winning." Jack felt something close to despair. "So we just give up? Let them keep poisoning people?" "I'm not giving up. But I need something they can't challenge, something bulletproof, and I need it fast before this whole thing gets buried so deep no one remembers it happened." "What would that look like?" "A whistleblower. Someone inside Prairie Chem willing to testify about the cover-up. Someone with first-hand knowledge and documents they can produce without illegal searches." Ross paused. "Do you know anyone like that?" Jack thought about Hank's nephew. Broken and pushed out years ago. Probably too scared to come forward now. "No, but I'll find someone." "You've got 48 hours before my supervisors officially shut this down. Make them count." The call ended. Jack sat there, phone in hand, feeling the walls closing in. They'd done everything right, collected evidence, gone through proper channels, exposed the truth. And it still wasn't enough, because the system only worked when the people running it allowed it to work. And Prairie Chem had spent years making sure those people were in their pocket. "I know that look," Hank said quietly. "That's the look of a man about to do something stupid." "Not stupid. Necessary." Jack stood. "I need to find someone inside Prairie Chem who's willing to talk. Someone with access to the real records, the actual disposal logs, the proof that can't be challenged." "And how do you plan to do that?" "By going back." Jack checked his weapon. "The break-in last night was rushed. I grabbed what I could and ran. But there's more in that facility. More evidence. And now I know where to look. Jack, they'll be expecting you. They'll have security doubled, cameras everywhere. You'll never make it in. I don't need to make it in. I need to make contact with someone who's already inside. Someone who's seen what I've seen and is tired of being complicit. Jack grabbed his jacket. There are good people working at that plant. People who take those jobs because they need to feed their families, not because they want to poison their neighbors. Someone there has to be ready to talk. Or they're all too scared to risk it. Hank stood. And if they are, you're walking into a trap for nothing. Then it's a trap. But I have to try. What Jack didn't know was that someone at Prairie Chem had already made that decision. And that person was about to change everything. At 6 a.m., Jack drove to a truck stop outside Hartwell. Public place, cameras, witnesses, safe neutral ground. He'd sent anonymous messages to 3 Prairie Chem employees through LinkedIn burner accounts, encrypted emails. Simple message. I know what you've seen. I can protect you if you're willing to talk. Truck stop off I-80 booth in the back 7 a.m. Come alone. Long odds. Probably no one would show. Probably he was wasting time. But he had to try. Jack ordered coffee, sat in the back booth, watched the door. 6:30 came and went. 6:45, 6:55. At 7:02, a woman walked in. Mid-30s, tired eyes. She looked around nervously, then made eye contact with Jack. Something passed between them, recognition maybe. Or just desperation recognizing desperation. She sat down across from him. Are you the one who sent the messages? Yeah, Jack Mercer. I know who you are. Everyone at the plant knows. She didn't give her name. Smart. I shouldn't be here. If they find out I talked to you, I'll lose my job. Maybe worse. I can protect you. Federal protection. The FBI is involved. She laughed bitter. The FBI investigation is being shut down. Company lawyers told us yesterday. Said they'd neutralized the threat. She looked at her hands. Said they'd dealt with you. They're trying. Doesn't mean they'll succeed. Jack leaned forward. What's your role at the plant? Safety compliance. Or at least that's what my title says. In reality, I document violations and watch management ignore them. Her voice was barely above a whisper. I've been doing this for 8 years. At first, I thought I could make a difference, report problems, fix things. But every time I flag something, it gets buried. Every time I push back, I get threatened. My performance reviews get worse. My hours get cut. The message is clear, stay quiet or lose everything. What have you seen? She was quiet for a long moment, weighing whether to cross that line. Finally, everything you said in that article is true. The illegal dumping, the falsified reports, the bribes to inspectors, all of it. She pulled out a flash drive, set it on the table. These are the real disposal logs, the ones we keep off the official systems. Every chemical dumped illegally for the past 5 years. Dates, quantities, locations, everything. Jack stared at the flash drive. Why are you giving this to me? Because I have a daughter. She's 4, and last month she started having seizures. Doctors can't explain it. But I know. I know it's because we live 2 miles from the plant, because she drinks the same water, because I've been complicit in poisoning my own child. Her voice broke. I can't do it anymore. I can't look at her and pretend I don't know. Jack took the flash drive, felt the weight of it. This was it. This was the evidence that couldn't be challenged. Internal documents from someone with direct access and knowledge. Exactly what Ross had said they needed. What's your name? Jack asked gently. Sarah Chen. I'm a safety compliance officer at Prairie Chem, and I'm willing to testify to everything I know. She met his eyes. But I need protection. For me and my daughter. They'll come after us. You'll have it. Federal witness protection if necessary. But Sarah, once you do this, there's no going back. Your life will change. Your daughter's life will change. Our lives are already changing. She's on medication a 4-year-old shouldn't need. If I don't do this, she might not have a life to change. Sarah stood. Call your FBI contact. Tell them I'll cooperate fully, but do it fast before I lose my nerve. Jack called Ross immediately. I've got your whistleblower. And she's got the documents. Are you certain they're legitimate? She's a safety compliance officer. She's been documenting violations for years, and she's willing to testify. Get her to Lincoln. Federal building. I'll have protection ready. Jack. Ross paused. This changes everything. If those documents show what you say, they show Prairie Chem can't make this go away. Jack drove Sarah to Lincoln himself. Axel in the back seat watching the road for any sign of pursuit. Sarah sat quiet, clutching her phone, probably texting her daughter. Probably saying goodbye to the life she'd known. Thank you, Jack said, for doing this, for being brave. I'm not brave, I'm terrified. Sarah's hands were shaking. But I'm more terrified of what happens if I don't. Of looking at my daughter in 10 years and knowing I had the chance to stop this and chose silence instead. They reached Lincoln by 9 a.m. Ross met them at the federal building with 2 other agents. She took the flash drive, reviewed the contents right there in the parking lot, and Jack watched her expression shift from skeptical to stunned. This is comprehensive, Ross said quietly. Disposal logs, emails, financial records showing bribes. This isn't just evidence, this is a complete paper trail of criminal conspiracy. She looked at Sarah. You understand what you're giving us. Everything I've been too scared to give for 8 years. Sarah's voice was steady now. Resolved. Use it. Stop them. Ross nodded. We will. And Ms. Chen, you're now in federal protective custody. We'll contact your family, get them somewhere safe. You won't go back to that town until this is over. They took Sarah inside. Jack started to leave, but Ross stopped him. Jack, wait. He turned back. What you did pushing this, refusing to back down, finding someone willing to talk, that's the only reason this case is still alive. Ross extended her hand. I've worked with a lot of people who call themselves heroes. Most of them are full of it. You're not. I just did what needed doing. That's what makes you different. Ross shook his hand. Go home. We've got this now. And Jack, rebuild your house. Fix your life. You've earned some peace. Jack drove back to Hartwell with Axel feeling something unfamiliar. Not victory, not yet, but possibility. The sense that maybe finally the system might actually work. But he'd learned not to celebrate too early, because Prairie Chem wasn't done fighting. At 3 p.m., Jack's phone exploded with notifications. News alerts. Social media mentions. Something had happened. Something big. He pulled up the first article and felt his blood go cold. Prairie Chem whistleblower found dead, apparent suicide. Jack's hands started shaking. He read the article. An employee named Daniel Reeves had been found in his car, carbon monoxide poisoning, apparent suicide. But the timing was too perfect, too convenient. His phone rang. Martinez. Jack, did you see? I saw it. It's not a suicide. I know. I'm already digging. Daniel Reeves worked in the same department as your actual whistleblower. Prairie Chem probably thinks they killed their leak. But Jack, her voice was tight. This is a message. They're telling everyone what happens to people who talk. Jack's mind was racing. If they thought Reeves was the whistleblower, that meant Sarah was still safe. They didn't know she'd already given everything to the FBI. But they'd figure it out eventually. And when they did. His phone rang again. Ross. Jack, we've got a situation. Daniel Reeves, one of Prairie Chem's safety officers, was found dead an hour ago. Local PD is calling it suicide, but it's murder. Jack's voice was hard. They killed him thinking he was the leak. That's our assessment, which means we need to move faster than planned. If Prairie Chem realizes Reeves wasn't their problem, they'll start looking for who is. And they might figure out it's Sarah. Ross's voice was urgent. We're executing search warrants today. Right now. Every Prairie Chem facility, every executive's home and office, everything. We're seizing documents before they can destroy them. What do you need from me? Stay safe. Stay visible. And if they come after you again, you call me immediately." Ross paused. "Jack, they've killed someone. This isn't corporate intimidation anymore. It's murder. Don't underestimate what they're willing to do." Jack hung up and looked at Axel. The dog was watching him, sensing his agitation. "We're not out of this yet, buddy. Not even close." At 5 p.m., the news broke. FBI executing simultaneous search warrants at multiple Prairie Chem locations. Federal agents seizing documents and computers. Executives being questioned. The story was everywhere. Jack's phone rang constantly. Reporters wanting statements. Local news wanting interviews. National outlets wanting his story. He ignored most of them, but when CNN called, he answered. "Mr. Mercer, this is Marcus Williams with CNN. We'd like to bring you on for an interview tonight. Tell your story to a national audience. Would you be willing?" Jack thought about what Hank had said days ago. Make yourself visible. Use attention as armor. "Yeah, I'll do it." "Excellent. We'll send a crew to your location. Can you be ready by 8 p.m. Eastern?" "I'll be ready." The CNN crew arrived at Hank's farm at 6 p.m. local time. They set up lights and cameras. Jack sat down Axel at his feet and told his story to 15 million people watching across the country. He told them about buying the farm, about Axel nearly dying, about finding the pipe. He told them about families poisoned and driven away, about the systematic cover-up and the officials who enabled it, about burning his house and threatening everyone involved. And he told them about Daniel Reeves, about how a good man had died because a corporation valued profits over human life. "The question Americans need to ask," Jack said, looking directly at the camera, "is how many Daniel Reeves are out there? How many people know the truth but are too scared to speak because they've seen what happens to whistleblowers? How many communities are being poisoned right now by companies that know they can get away with it because they have money and power and connections?" The interview went viral. Within an hour, it was trending on every platform. Politicians started making statements. Activists started organizing protests. Other whistleblowers from other companies started coming forward with their own stories of corruption and cover-ups. Jack had wanted to expose Prairie Chem. Instead, he'd accidentally started a national conversation about corporate accountability. But that night, as Jack tried to sleep on Hank's couch, his phone rang at 2 a.m. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer. "Hello." Heavy breathing. Then a voice electronically distorted. "You just killed 50 people." Jack sat up. "What?" "The search warrants. The FBI seizure. You know what happens when a chemical plant gets raided, operations stop. Safety protocols get disrupted. We had 3 reactors in critical states. The FBI seizure prevented our team from completing proper shutdown procedures." The voice was cold. At 1:47 a.m., Reactor 3 experienced a catastrophic pressure failure. 12 workers in the facility. Emergency response couldn't reach them in time because FBI agents had the building locked down. Jack felt his stomach drop. "You're lying." "Turn on the news." Jack grabbed the remote, flipped to CNN. Breaking news banner. Explosion at Nebraska chemical plant. Multiple casualties reported. His hands started shaking. "This is on you, Mercer. You wanted justice. You got death. 12 families just lost someone because you couldn't leave well enough alone." The voice paused. "And when their lawyers come after you, when the civil suits start, when the families of the dead blame you for pushing the FBI to act too fast, remember that you did this. You killed them." The line went dead. Jack sat there, remote in hand, watching footage of the plant engulfed in flames, emergency vehicles, body bags, and he felt something break inside him. Had he done this? Had his push for accountability actually gotten people killed? His phone rang. "Ross." "Jack." I know what you're thinking. Don't. This wasn't your fault. They said the FBI seizure prevented proper shutdown. They're lying. We followed every safety protocol. The plant had been operating with critical violations for months. Our preliminary investigation suggests the explosion was caused by those violations, not our presence. Ross's voice was firm. This is exactly what they want you to think. That holding them accountable causes harm. That justice is more dangerous than letting them continue. Don't let them win that way. But what if they're right? What if pushing this made things worse? 12 people are dead. Jack. But how many would have died over the next 10 years if we'd done nothing? How many kids would have developed cancer? How many families would have been poisoned? You can't measure prevention. You can't count the lives saved by stopping something before it kills more people. Ross paused. Those 12 deaths are tragic. But they're on Prairie Chem, not on you. Don't let them rewrite that narrative. Jack wanted to believe her, but the guilt was crushing. He'd pushed and pushed and pushed, convinced he was doing the right thing. And now people were dead. Hank sat down beside him. She's right, you know. This isn't on you. How do you know? Because I know companies like Prairie Chem. They're already spinning this. Already calling it an unavoidable accident. Already trying to use those deaths to shut down the investigation. Hank gripped his shoulder. But the truth is that plant was a disaster waiting to happen. You didn't cause this explosion, you exposed the conditions that made it inevitable. There's a difference. Jack's phone buzzed. Text from Martinez. Just got off the phone with a plant worker who escaped. He says management has been ignoring safety warnings for months. Reactor 3 was flagged as critical 3 weeks ago. They knew this could happen and did nothing. This isn't your fault, Jack. This is theirs. Another text, this one from Mateo. Saw the news. Don't blame yourself. You saved my family. You saved this town. Whatever happens at that plant, remember that. More messages came through. From people Jack had never met. From families who'd left the area and were grateful someone finally stood up. From workers at other plants who were inspired to report their own safety concerns. But the guilt didn't fade. Because 12 people were dead, and Jack couldn't shake the feeling that if he'd done things differently, maybe they'd still be alive. At dawn, Jack walked outside. Axel followed. They stood in Hank's driveway, watching the sun come up over Nebraska farmland, and Jack tried to figure out if he'd done the right thing. He'd exposed corruption. He'd held power accountable. He'd given voice to families who'd been silenced. But he'd also possibly triggered an explosion that killed 12 people. And no amount of justification could erase that. His phone rang. Special Agent Ross again. Jack, we've finished our initial investigation of the explosion. It was caused by a corroded pressure valve that had been flagged for replacement 6 months ago. Management ignored the recommendation to save money. This had nothing to do with the FBI seizure. Ross's voice was steady. The workers who died were killed by Prairie Chem's negligence, not your actions. I need you to understand that. Doesn't change that they're dead. No, but it changes who's responsible. Ross paused. Jack, we're filing charges. Criminal negligence, manslaughter. And now, thanks to Sarah Chen's documents, we can prove Prairie Chem knew about the safety violations and chose to ignore them. Those 12 deaths aren't just tragic. They're evidence of criminal conduct. Jack felt something shift. The guilt was still there, but so was clarity. What do you need from me? Keep being visible. Keep telling the truth. And when this goes to trial, be ready to testify. Ross's voice softened. Jack, you did the right thing. I know it doesn't feel that way right now. But you did. The sun was fully up now. Jack stood there with Axel's phone in hand and made a choice. He couldn't control what had happened. He couldn't bring back those 12 workers, but he could make sure their deaths meant something. He could make sure Prairie Chem finally faced consequences. And he could make sure no other family had to go through what the Garzas went through, what Dr. Ruiz's patients went through, What Hank went through losing his wife. "All right," Jack said quietly. "Let's finish this." 3 days after the explosion, Jack stood in a federal courtroom watching Richard Vance and 4 other Prairie Chem executives get arraigned on criminal charges: manslaughter, criminal negligence, environmental crimes, witness tampering. The list went on for 3 pages. Vance's lawyers argued for bail. The prosecutor stood up and said 7 words that made Jack's chest tighten. "Your Honor, we have evidence of flight risk." The judge denied bail. All 5 executives were remanded to federal custody pending trial. Jack walked out of that courtroom feeling something he hadn't felt in weeks. Not quite victory, the trial would take months, maybe years. But vindication. The system was working. Slowly, painfully, but working. Outside reporters swarmed. Jack had learned to handle them, now learned which questions to answer and which to deflect. But one voice cut through the chaos. "Jack." Martinez pushed through the crowd. "Can I get a statement?" "You know you can always get a statement." Jack managed a tired smile. "Walk with me." They moved away from the cameras. Martinez pulled out her recorder. "How are you holding up?" "Honestly, I don't know." Jack watched Axel sniff around a tree just being a dog. "Some days I feel like we did the right thing. Other days I think about those 12 workers and wonder if there was a better way." There wasn't. I've spent the last 72 hours investigating that explosion. Talked to 30 current and former employees. Every single one said the same thing: that plant was an accident waiting to happen. Management ignored safety violations for years. You didn't cause that explosion, Jack. You just happened to be there when decades of negligence finally caught up with them. Doesn't make it easier. It's not supposed to. Martinez stopped recording. "Can I tell you something off the record?" "Sure." "I've been doing this job for 15 years. I've covered wars, political corruption, corporate fraud. And I've never seen someone push as hard as you did for something you had no personal stake in." She met his eyes. "You could have walked away 100 times, taken the money, left town, let someone else fight this fight. But you didn't. And because you didn't, hundreds of families now know the truth. Hundreds of kids might not get sick. That matters, Jack. Don't lose sight of that." Jack nodded, not trusting himself to speak. Martinez squeezed his shoulder and walked back toward the courthouse. His phone rang. "Mateo." "Did you see the news? They arrested them. All of them." Mateo's voice was thick with emotion. "Elena's crying. Happy crying. Our daughter's going to grow up knowing the people who hurt her are in jail. That's because of you, hermano." "That's because of all of us," Jack said. "You provided evidence. Dr. Ruiz documented medical cases. Sarah Chen gave us the smoking gun. This was never just me. But you were the one who wouldn't quit. When the rest of us were scared, when we wanted to back down, you kept pushing." Mateo paused. "We're throwing a party. Tomorrow night. Everyone who helped you, Dr. Ruiz, Hank, whoever you want to bring. Just good people celebrating something good for once. Will you come?" Jack looked at Axel. Thought about his burned house, his disrupted life, the weight he'd been carrying for weeks. "Yeah, I'll be there." But that night, as Jack lay on Hank's couch, staring at the ceiling, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The arrests had happened too smoothly. The executives had surrendered without a fight. Prairie Chem's lawyers, who'd been aggressive for weeks, had suddenly gone quiet. It felt like the calm before a storm. At 3 a.m., his instincts proved right. His phone rang. "Ross." "Jack, we have a problem. Richard Vance made bail." "What? You said the judge denied." "Appeals court overturned it 2 hours ago. Some technical issue with how we argued flight risk. Vance posted a $10 million bond and walked out." Ross's voice was tight. "He's supposed to surrender his passport and wear a monitoring device. But Jack, I don't trust this. Something's not right." "Where is he now?" "Unknown. He left the detention center at 1 a.m. and disappeared." Monitoring device went offline 40 minutes later. We've got teams looking, but... Ross paused. Jack, if he's running, he might try to tie up loose ends first. Loose ends meaning the people who testified against him. You, Sarah Chen, the EPA contact, anyone who could hurt him at trial. Ross's voice was urgent. Where are you right now? At Hank Dwyer's place, about 10 miles outside Hartwell. Good. Stay there. I'm sending local FBI to provide security. Don't open the door for anyone except identified federal agents. And Jack, if Vance shows up, don't try to be a hero. Call 911 and get somewhere safe. Jack hung up and immediately woke Hank. We've got a situation. Vance is out on bail and off the grid. FBI thinks he might come after witnesses. Hank was out of bed, instantly moving faster than a man his age should be able to. How long until FBI gets here? She didn't say. 20 minutes. 30. Then we prepare for 31. Hank pulled weapons from his gun safe. 2 rifles, 3 pistols, ammunition. You know how to set up a defensive position. I spent 15 years in the Army. Yeah, I know. They moved through the house, turning off lights, positioning weapons at strategic points, setting up sight lines. Jack sent Axel to the basement with a command to stay quiet. The dog obeyed, but Jack could see the tension in him. Axel knew something was wrong. At 3:47 a.m., headlights appeared on the long driveway. 1 vehicle. Moving slow. No flashing lights, not FBI. Jack positioned himself at the front window. Hank took the back. They waited. The vehicle stopped 50 yards out. Engine still running. No one got out. Jack's combat instincts were screaming. This was wrong. All wrong. A direct approach would be stupid. Vance had to know they'd be ready. So what was he? Jack. Hank's voice was tight. Back window. 2 more vehicles approaching with lights off. Jack's blood went cold. Classic 3-point assault. 1 vehicle up front, as distraction, 2 coming in from the sides. Military tactics. Vance had hired professionals. Call 911, Jack said. Tell them we're under attack, then get to the basement with Axel. Like hell. This is my house. And you're 83 years old. I've done this before. You haven't. Jack moved to the back window, rifle ready. Please, Hank. I can't protect you and defend the house. I need you safe. Hank hesitated, then nodded. Don't die in my living room. Wife would never forgive me. He disappeared downstairs. Jack was alone now, watching 3 vehicles converge on the house. The front one's doors opened. 4 men climbed out, body armor, visible weapons raised. Not trying to hide anymore. This was an assault. Jack's training took over. Assess threats, calculate responses, identify objectives. They wanted him dead or captured. They wanted to silence him before trial. And they'd brought enough firepower to do it. But what they didn't know was that Jack Mercer had spent 15 years training for exactly this kind of fight, and he'd already decided he wasn't going quietly. Jack fired a warning shot through the front window. High, deliberate miss. Message clear. I'm armed, and I will shoot. The men scattered, taking cover behind their vehicles. One yelled into a radio. They were coordinating, professional. Definitely hired security, maybe ex-military themselves. Jack's phone buzzed. Text from unknown number. Come out. We talk. Nobody gets hurt. Jack texted back. FBI is 2 minutes away. You're about to get arrested for attempted murder. Leave now while you still can. Response. FBI is 20 minutes away. We disabled the local cell tower and jammed police frequencies. It's just us, Mercer. Come out or we come in. Your choice. Jack felt ice in his veins. They'd planned this. Really planned it. Which meant Vance wasn't just running, he was eliminating threats before disappearing for good. But Jack wasn't going down without a fight. He moved to the kitchen, grabbed Hank's propane tank from the grill outside, hauled it inside, set it by the back door. Then he went to Hank's workshop, found what he needed. Road flares, duct tape, a timer from an old irrigation system. Jack wasn't just defending anymore. He was setting traps. At 4:03 a.m. the assault began. Flash bang through the front window. Jack had anticipated it was already in the hallway with eyes closed and ears covered. The explosion was deafening, but didn't catch him unprepared. Men breached through the front door. Jack fired twice center, mass dropped the first one. The others scattered back outside. They hadn't expected resistance this organized. "Mercer!" A voice shouted from outside. "We're not here to kill you. Mr. Vance just wants to talk, work out a deal." Tell Vance he had his chance to deal. He chose murder instead. Jack moved to a different window new angle. Now he gets federal prison. You don't understand what you're messing with. The evidence you collected, it doesn't just hurt Prairie Chem. It exposes connections to state officials, federal regulators, people with the power to make this all disappear. The voice was calm, professional. Mr. Vance is offering $5 million. Retract your testimony. Disappear. Start over somewhere else. Everyone wins. Except the families you poisoned. Those families are getting their settlement. Class action lawsuit just cleared judicial review. $20 million divided among affected households. They're being taken care of. The voice moved, circling around to the side of the house. You've already won, Mercer. You exposed the truth. The company's paying. What more do you want? I want Vance in prison. I want everyone who knew about this contamination and did nothing to face consequences. I want a system that actually protects people instead of corporations. Jack watched the windows, waiting for movement. And I want you and your team off my property before this gets uglier. Can't do that. We have a contract. Then you're about to find out what happens when contractors go up against someone who actually knows how to fight. Silence. Then, breach team execute. 2 men came through the back door. Jack had been waiting. He triggered the propane tank he'd rigged, not an explosion, just a rapid release of gas. The cloud filled the back hallway, flammable and disorienting. Jack fired a road flare into it. The gas ignited. Not a massive explosion like in movies, but a fast-moving fireball that sent both men scrambling back outside, equipment smoking. Jack used the chaos to reposition. New angle, new sight lines. They'd underestimated him once. They wouldn't twice. But then he heard something that made his heart stop. Axel barking from the basement, and Hank's voice strained. "Jack, basement window, they're coming through." Jack sprinted downstairs, found Hank holding a shotgun on 2 men climbing through the window well, but one of them had a weapon already raised, aimed at Hank's chest. Jack didn't hesitate. He fired. The man went down. The second one scrambled back outside. "You okay?" Jack asked. "Define okay." Hank was breathing hard, adrenaline and age catching up with him. "How many of these bastards are there?" "Too many." Jack helped Axel up the stairs, kept the dog close. "We need to hold out until FBI arrives. Ross said 20 minutes. We're at 12 minutes in. Feels like hours. Always does." They moved back upstairs. Jack was taking stock of ammunition, calculating how long they could hold out, when he heard the sound that changed everything. Sirens. Multiple vehicles approaching fast. The assault team heard it too. Radio chatter outside, urgent. Then engines starting. The vehicles peeled away, disappearing into the darkness. Jack lowered his rifle, felt his hands start shaking. Not from fear, from adrenaline crash. He'd been in combat mode for 15 minutes straight. Now his body was reminding him he wasn't 25 anymore. FBI vehicles pulled up. Ross jumped out, weapon-drawn tactical team behind her. "Jack, you okay?" "We're alive. 1 hostile down inside. The rest fled." Jack pointed toward where the vehicles had disappeared. They had at least 6, maybe 8 operators. Professional team. This wasn't random thugs. This was coordinated assault. Ross spoke into her radio, coordinating pursuit. Then she turned back to Jack. "This changes everything. Vance just escalated from white-collar crime to attempted murder of a federal witness. Every law enforcement agency in 3 states is now hunting him. He's already gone. Probably had an escape plan ready. New identity, offshore accounts, the whole setup. Jack sat down heavily on Hank's porch steps. Axel pressed against him. He's not coming back. Maybe. But his assets aren't gone. His co-defendants aren't gone. And Sarah Chen's testimony is still solid. Ross sat beside him. Jack, you just survived an assault by a team that probably cost Vance $500,000 to hire. That's not the action of someone who thinks they're winning. That's desperation. Felt pretty aggressive for desperation. Because you're the linchpin. You're the public face of this case. You're the one everyone knows. If he could eliminate you, he could potentially unravel the whole investigation. Ross met his eyes. But he failed. And now every action he takes just proves how guilty he is. Innocent men don't hire hit squads. The tactical team secured the scene. They found the downed hostel still alive in custody, already asking for a lawyer. The basement window team had left blood trails leading away from the property. Wounded, probably caught by Hank's shotgun blasts. They wouldn't get far. As dawn broke, Jack stood in Hank's driveway watching federal agents process evidence, catalog bullet holes, document the assault. His phone was buzzing constantly. Martinez wanting a statement. Mateo checking if he was okay. Dr. Ruiz offering medical help. The Garza family sending prayers. And through it all, Jack felt something shift. This wasn't just about Prairie Chem anymore. This wasn't just about one corporation and one contamination incident. This was about what happened when regular people stood up to power. About the cost of accountability. About whether justice was worth the fight. His answer was still yes. But damn, the price was high. 6 weeks later, Jack stood in another courtroom, this time for the preliminary hearing in the criminal case. The prosecution laid out their evidence. Sarah Chen testified about the falsified records. EPA presented contamination data. Medical experts connected the chemicals to illness patterns. And Jack told his story. The pipe, the threats, the burned house, the assault. The defense tried to discredit him, pointed to his PTSD diagnosis, questioned his motives, suggested he was an unstable veteran with a vendetta. But every attack just made the jury, potential jury members, this was only preliminary, more sympathetic to Jack's story. Because Jack didn't hide his trauma. He owned it. Yeah, I have PTSD. You know what causes that? Watching friends die in war. Seeing injustice up close. Learning that sometimes good people suffer while bad people profit. He looked at Prairie Chem's lawyers. And you know what my therapist at the VA told me helps with PTSD? Having purpose, taking action, fighting for something meaningful. So thank you. Exposing your client's crimes has been better therapy than any medication. The courtroom was silent. Even the defense lawyer had no response. The judge ordered the case to proceed to trial. Bail was denied again for all remaining defendants. Vance was still missing, now an international fugitive with Interpol warrants. But his co-defendants were going to trial, and the evidence was overwhelming. Outside the courthouse, Jack gave one final interview. Martinez was there, camera rolling. Jack, it's been 2 months since this started. Your house burned down. You've been assaulted multiple times. You nearly died defending Hank Dwyer's property. Was it worth it? Jack thought about the question. Really thought about it. Ask the Garza family. Ask their daughter, who's been seizure-free for 6 weeks now that they're on clean water. Ask the 20 other families who've come forward with health complaints and are finally getting tested. Ask the workers at other chemical plants who've reported violations because they saw what happened here and decided they wouldn't stay silent. He paused. Yeah, it was worth it. What's next for you? Rebuild my house, get back to farming, live the quiet life I came here for. Jack smiled. Or at least try to. And if another situation like this comes up, if you see injustice and everyone else is looking away. Jack looked at Axel sitting patiently beside him, the dog who'd nearly died and triggered everything that followed. Then I'll do what I was trained to do, what every veteran is trained to do. Protect people who can't protect themselves. Stand up when others can't or won't, not because it's easy or safe or profitable, but because it's right. 3 months later, Jack stood in front of his rebuilt house. Not fancy, practical, solid, paid for by a combination of insurance money and a settlement from Prairie Chem's corporate insurance carrier who'd dropped them the moment criminal charges were filed. The house was smaller than the original, but better insulated, more efficient. A fresh start. Mateo and Elena helped him move furniture in. Dr. Ruiz brought a housewarming gift, a framed photograph of Axel with a plaque reading, "Hero Dog." Hank showed up with his wife's recipe for Nebraska corn casserole and advice about which crops would grow best in the soil now that remediation was underway. The EPA had declared the area a Superfund site. Full cleanup would take years, but interim filtration systems were providing clean water to every household. The contaminated soil was being removed. The creek was being restored. It would never be exactly what it was, but it would be safe. That mattered. Sarah Chen stopped by with her daughter, now 5 years old and healthy. The seizures had stopped once they'd moved away from the contaminated area and started treatment. "She asks about you," Sarah said. "Calls you the man who saved Mommy. I tell her you saved a lot more than that." Jack knelt down to the little girl's level. "You know what I tell people? I tell them your mom is the real hero. She's the one who was brave enough to tell the truth when it mattered most." The girl smiled and handed Jack a drawing, a stick figure man with a dog, just like the one from the Garza daughter. Apparently, Jack was collecting crayon drawings from kids whose lives had been saved by corporate accountability. Not a bad collection to have. As the sun set and people filtered out, Jack sat on his new porch with Axel watching the sky turn orange and purple. The Prairie Chem facility was visible in the distance, but it wasn't operational anymore. Federal oversight had found so many violations that operations had been suspended indefinitely. The company was filing for bankruptcy, executives were preparing for trial, and Vance was still missing his face on wanted posters from Nebraska to Brazil. Jack's phone buzzed. Text from Ross. Verdict in the civil trial. Jury awarded plaintiffs $340 million, largest environmental settlement in state history. Thought you'd want to know? Jack smiled. $340 million divided among 73 families. Not enough to undo the damage, but enough to pay for medical care, to rebuild lives, to send kids to college without the burden of medical debt. Enough to say their suffering mattered. His phone rang. A number he didn't recognize, but a voice he'd never forget. "Hello, Jack." "Richard Vance." "I hear you're rebuilding. That's good. Everyone deserves a fresh start." Jack's hand tightened on the phone. "Where are you?" "Somewhere your FBI friends can't reach me. Somewhere I can watch the sunset and not think about Nebraska mud and failed careers." Vance's voice was bitter. "But I wanted you to know you didn't win. You destroyed one company. There are hundreds more doing the same thing. You exposed one cover-up. There are thousands more. You think you made a difference? You just made some lawyers rich and gave yourself a hero complex. I made 12 families safer. I made one town's water clean. I proved that corporate criminals can be held accountable." Jack's voice was calm. "You call that nothing, I call it everything. We'll see. When the appeals drag on for years, when the settlements get reduced on technicalities, when the EPA gets budget cuts and the cleanup slows down, when people forget and move on and nothing fundamentally changes." Vance paused. "You're one man, Jack. You can't change the system." "You're right. I can't." Jack looked at his rebuilt house, thought about the families who'd helped him raise walls, the community that had come together after years of being divided by fear. "But we can. That's what you never understood. This was never about me. It was about all of us deciding we'd had enough. And that's why you're hiding in whatever country doesn't have an extradition treaty while your co-defendants are going to prison. Because you were alone. And we weren't." Jack hung up, blocked the number, and decided that was the last time he'd waste energy on Richard Vance. 6 months after everything started, Jack was back to farming. His land was still contaminated in places, but the EPA had cleared certain sections for agricultural use. He planted corn, soybeans, set up proper irrigation from the new well. It wasn't the retirement life he'd planned, but it was honest work with honest results. Axel had fully recovered. No lasting effects from the poisoning. The dog spent his days patrolling the property line, investigating every smell, barking at rabbits. Normal dog stuff. It was beautiful. Dr. Ruiz stopped by weekly, checking on Axel's progress, but also becoming something like a friend. She'd started a non-profit doing free water testing for rural communities. Already identified 2 other potential contamination sites in neighboring counties. The fight was spreading. Martinez won her Pulitzer for investigative journalism. She called Jack when she found out, sobbing happy tears. "We did it! We actually did it!" And Jack felt proud because she'd taken risks too, stood up to pressure, refused to back down. She deserved every accolade. The trial lasted 4 weeks. All 4 remaining executives were convicted on multiple counts. Sentences ranged from 8 to 15 years in federal prison. Justice moved slowly, but it moved. And through it all, Jack just kept living. Farming his land, walking Axel, having coffee with Hank, helping the Garzas with their harvest. Living the quiet life he'd wanted all along, but now with the satisfaction of knowing he'd earned it. That he'd stood up when it mattered. That he'd refused to look away. 1 year after buying the farm, Jack stood by the creek on his western property line. The water ran clear now, tested weekly by the EPA. Fish were returning, plants were growing. The hidden pipe had been excavated and sealed. The entire discharge system had been dismantled. It would never be pristine. You can't undo decades of contamination overnight. But it was healing, slowly, gradually, getting better instead of worse. That counted for something. Jack's phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, still wary after Vance's call months ago. But something made him pick up. "Mr. Mercer," a young woman's voice. "My name is Amanda Price. I'm a paralegal in Iowa. I'm calling because I've been following your case and I think something similar is happening in my town. There's a factory chemical discharge, people getting sick, and everyone's too scared to say anything because the company employs half the county." Jack closed his eyes, felt the familiar weight settling on his shoulders. "What do you need?" "Advice. Maybe contacts with people who can help." "I don't know. I just know someone has to do something, and everyone I talk to says it's impossible. That you can't fight corporations that big. That regular people don't win against that kind of power." Her voice cracked. "But you did. So I thought maybe you could tell me how." Jack looked at Axel, thought about everything they'd been through. The poisoning, the threats, the burned house, the assault, the fear and pain and uncertainty. Then he thought about the Garza daughter, healthy now. About Sarah Chen's kid, seizure-free. About clean water flowing through a creek that had run toxic for years. "It's not easy," Jack said. "It's going to cost you sleep and probably money and maybe relationships. People will call you crazy, companies will threaten you, officials will ignore you, and there will be days when you wonder if it's worth it. So I shouldn't try." "I didn't say that." Jack smiled. "I said it's not easy. But here's what I learned: you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be fearless. You just have to be stubborn enough not to quit. And you have to find other people who feel the same way. Because this kind of fight, you can't do it alone. But you don't have to. There are good people everywhere just waiting for someone to be brave enough to start." "Will you help me?" Jack thought about the quiet life he'd wanted. The peaceful retirement. The simple existence of farming and walking his dog and watching sunsets. Everything he'd come to Nebraska to find. Then he thought about Amanda Price. Probably young, probably scared, probably looking at a situation that felt overwhelming and impossible. The same way he'd felt 2 months ago standing by a creek with a poisoned dog. "Yeah," Jack said. "I'll help you. Send me what you have. I'll connect you with the right people. And Amanda, you're not alone in this. Not anymore." He hung up and stood there for a long moment. Axel nudged his hand, and Jack scratched behind the dog's ears. So much for the quiet life, huh, buddy? Axel's tail wagged. Jack looked out at his property, at the healing creek, at the town beyond where families were rebuilding their lives. He thought about everything he'd learned over the past year. About the cost of standing up and the price of staying silent. About how systems only work when people refuse to let them fail. About how one person with enough determination could start something that changed everything. He'd come to Nebraska for peace. Instead, he'd found purpose. And maybe Jack thought maybe that was better. Peace without purpose was just numbness. Purpose without peace was just exhaustion. But purpose that led to peace for yourself and for others, that was worth fighting for. His phone buzzed again. This time, a text from Mateo. Family dinner Sunday. You're coming. No arguments. Elena's making tamales, and our daughter wants to show you her science project about water quality. See you at 6. Jack smiled. A year ago, he'd been alone in this state except for Axel. Now he had friends, community purpose. People who'd fought beside him and people he'd fought for. A network of good people doing good things. Not bad for a veteran who just wanted to fix up an old farmhouse and be left alone. Another text, this one from Dr. Ruiz. New contamination case in Cedar County. Family with sick kids. Sound familiar? Thought you might want to know. And another from Martinez. Writing a follow-up piece on corporate accountability 1 year later. Need a quote from the man who started it all. Call me. Jack looked at his phone at the messages piling up at the causes and cases and people who needed help. He could ignore them. Go back to farming. Let someone else carry the weight. He'd done his part. He'd earned his rest. But that wasn't who Jack Mercer was. That wasn't what 15 years in the Army had taught him. And that wasn't what Axel's poisoning had shown him he was capable of. He was someone who stood up, who didn't look away, who protected people who couldn't protect themselves. Not because it was easy or safe or what he'd planned, but because it was right. And some things were worth fighting for, even when the fight never really ended. Jack called Hank. You busy Sunday? Depends. What are you getting me into? The Garzas are having dinner, and I might need to drive to Cedar County Monday to check out a potential contamination case. Thought you might want to come along. Share your expertise. Hank laughed. Expertise in what? Being an old man who's too stubborn to die. Expertise in standing up when everyone else sits down. Expertise in knowing right from wrong. Expertise in being the kind of person who makes a difference. Jack paused. Plus, I might need someone to watch Axel while I'm talking to officials who don't like dogs in their offices. Well, when you put it that way. Hank's voice was warm. Yeah, I'm in. Always am. Jack ended the call and sat on his porch one more time, Axel beside him, watching the sun finish its descent. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Next week would bring new fights. Next year would bring new corporations and new cover-ups and new people who needed someone to stand with them. But tonight, Jack just sat with his dog on the porch of his rebuilt house in the town he'd helped save, surrounded by people he'd helped protect, and felt something he hadn't felt in 15 years of war and aftermath. He felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be, doing exactly what he was meant to do. And that was worth every burned house, every threat, every sleepless night, and every moment of doubt. Because peace wasn't the absence of trouble. Peace was having trouble and facing it anyway. Peace was knowing you'd done the right thing, even when it cost you. Peace was looking at yourself in the mirror and recognizing the person staring back. Jack Mercer had come to Nebraska for a quiet life and found a war instead. But he'd also found community purpose and proof that one person with a loyal dog and a stubborn heart could stand against power and win. Not every time, not without cost, but enough to matter, enough to make a difference, enough to prove that justice wasn't dead, it was just waiting for someone brave enough to fight for it. And Jack would keep fighting. For as long as it took. For as many families as needed help. For every contaminated creek and poisoned well and silenced whistleblower who just needed someone to believe them. Because that's what veterans did. That's what good people did. That's what being human required when you saw suffering and had the power to stop it. Jack Mercer didn't set out to be a hero. He just set out to save his dog. But sometimes, that's all it takes to change everything, one person who refuses to accept that wrong is inevitable. Who stands up when standing is hard, who looks at injustice and says, "Not here, not now, not on my watch." The creek ran clear. The town was healing. The fight continued. And Jack Mercer was exactly where he needed to be, standing guard over the people and places worth protecting with Axel by his side and purpose in his heart. That was enough. That was everything. That was the life he'd been searching for all along.